Coming up next on All About Android, it's me, Jason Howell. We've got Ron Richards and Wintwit Dow no longer in the studio sitting with me, but they are, zooming in from their homes. We are also joined by Mike Wolfson, who joins us every year around I/O to either give a preview or do a recap. This year, it's a recap, so we're happy to have him. It is our big Google I/O recap episode. So we take a look at all the major announcements, and let me just kind of spoil the surprise a little bit. There's a ton of AI at this year's Google I/O, if you didn't already know. Hardware, so much stuff coming from I/O. So we have that. If you notice that this feed is really long, that's because after the credits, we've included our interview from the Google campus with Dave Burke and Samir Samat of the Google Android team. We talk all about Android 14, the keynote that they had just finished literally 2 hours prior to the interview. So you don't want to miss it. Supersized, All About Android coming up next.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is All About Android, episode 630, recorded Tuesday, May 16th, 2023. IO23. This is the way. This episode of All About Android is brought to you by Cashfly. Cashfly delivers rich media content up to 10 times faster than traditional delivery methods and 30% faster than other major CDNs. Meet customer expectations 100% of the time. Learn how you can get your first month free at cashfly.com. Also, thank you for listening. As an ad-supported network, we are always looking for new partners with products and services that will benefit our audience. 99% of our audience listens to most of all of our episodes. So grow your brand with authentic ad reads that always resonate with our audience. Reach out to advertise at twit.tv and launch your campaign now. Hello, welcome to All About Android. This is your weekly source for the latest news, hardware, and apps for the Android faithful. I'm Jason Howell.
And I'm Ron Richards.
And I'm Wintwit Dow.
And we are all in our places.
We're not together.
Not all together, not sitting physically at this desk the way we were just a week ago. What a wonderful week that was, or episode, and week, because I/O was a lot of fun. We're going to talk all about it. But before we get into that, just want to make mention that we have our esteemed return guest, Mike Wolfson, joining us. MikeWolfson.com, Android Google developer expert, and all around awesome guy, especially pre or post I/O. It depends on the year, but Mike, it's good to have you back.
Thank you, and thank you for calling me esteemed. That's the nicest thing anybody said about me today.
I mean, just look at all those badges. Who could have all those badges and not be considered esteemed?
True.
If you're wearing those, I don't know how you walk around. That's probably very heavy.
I will say that it's Pavlovian in me now that whenever we start talking about Google I/O, I get excited to see Mike. Yeah. And so while Mike, you're on the post I/O show, I'm glad that the multi-year tradition of Google I/O and Mike being on the show is still in play. So
that's
good
right.
job.
That's right. It's good to have you here, Mike. So we should note before we, right off the jump here, this episode is very long. You probably saw it in your podcast feed and you're like, holy moly, what's going on here? The reason for this is that, and we're going to talk all about Google I/O coming up here. After the credits of this episode, you get a bonus episode tacked on to the very end. So last Wednesday from Google I/O, when Ron and myself, we were on the Google campus, we had the opportunity to speak with Samir Samat and Dave Burke from Google's Android team, all about everything that they talked about during the keynote. And this was like 2 hours after the keynote ended. So we felt very privileged to be able to sit down with them. They had very busy schedules and they gave us like 45 minutes to chat with them. It was a lot of fun. And the interview went out on our Twit news feed, twit.tv/news. But I mean, you all who subscribe to this show, you're the core audience for this information. And so we figured, why not just put this interview at the end of this episode? If you've already checked it out on the Twit News feed, you don't have to listen to it. You don't have to watch it. If you haven't, we're saving you the need to jump over there. You can just check it out here. And yeah, so you get a little bonus. You get 2 episodes in one. That's our gift to you.
How about that? And it was a great, fun conversation that flew by.
Yeah, it really did.
I think it ended up being about 45 minutes recorded or so. Yep. And you could hear both. We've had Dave on the show before. It was great to meet him in person, but to meet Samir as well and hear from both of them from their perspective about everything, all the stuff we're going to talk about here on tonight's show as we break down IO. But as you mentioned, Jason, just coming literally almost less than 2 hours after the keynote, you could still get the adrenaline radiating off of Dave from his so many recaps of the keynote that I saw called out Dave's performance of and he did a great job with those live demos and stuff like that, and he talked a little bit about that during the interview. So seriously, I know personally for me it was the absolute. I mean, on top of being in person with you both, Jason and Wynn, and Burke, and Anthony and Victor and the whole crew, it was the highlight of my Google I/O, just being able to sit down with them and have a great, exclusive conversation. So I hope everybody enjoys listening to it.
Yes, indeed. That is after the credits roll on this episode. And this episode could just by itself be a little bit longer because there was so much to talk, so much news from Google I/O. So let's not dance around it anymore. It's time to turn off the music. It's time to get serious. Let's start talking about Google I/O. It's time for the news.
So thanks for bringing that up about last week. And thanks for the kind words, Ron, because I was a little salty you guys didn't bring me last week.
Yeah, we tried. We tried.
tried.
I can't tell you how many hours I spent on the phone with Google reps saying, look, Victor wants to come. He wants to be here. Why can't Victor make it? And they were like, next year. And so maybe there's hope.
Thanks. That makes me feel a little bit better.
that whole last part there, I fed into an AI system and it told me to tell you that. So I don't know if it's true, but anyways.
Well, it's not true because there is no way to call Google, even if you certainly hope to. That was the part that I knew. It was
that's how you knew it was an AI system.
Well, I'll just say I appreciate the thought.
There we go. Okay. All right.
Even from AI, Jason.
Before we dig into the shows, Wynn had some great pictures from AAA Google I/O.
It's not just me too. I mean, Michelle contributed some.
And Michelle, right?
So
the link, Victor, in the doc above the news section, there's a little photo album there, and I mean. Rarely, if ever, actually, never before last Tuesday and Wednesday were all of us in the same place at the same time. So, had to capture it. And Wynn took a number of photos. We got a bunch of really awesome. There's Victor in there, Michelle. We got a bunch of awesome group pictures and everything. Saw Flo.
So, for our audio listeners, these are all photos of us at Google I/O right now. But
this is the first time I got to sneak. I've tried to sneak into the press boxes at Starline Amphitheater for years, just because they're nice to sit in. They're a little more roomy, but they're pretty good with the bouncers. But this year I managed to sneak into the press box with these lovely folks and sit from there.
Hi, Flo.
And Flo, I miss Flo.
I know. How did that happen?
I don't know. I miss Flo and I'm so sad. And she was very proud of her cloud zit patch, which is a conversation starter. But it was just really, really great to see everybody in person and to be at Shoreline with everybody and kind of experience this together.
Yeah. So actually, so let's just real quick spend like a minute talking about that aspect because Mike, when both of you were at IO last year, Mike, you were not at IO this year, but when you were, changes. I mean, it is different. They let in more people. Arguably, we as a team had more going on, but was it an upgrade in your mind, Wynn? What do you think?
So as the
event is concerned, I suppose.
As a developer, no, there was less developers, and I say not an upgrade, and I don't mean that to be insulting.
Yeah.
It's just that it's kind of the same where there's basically just the consumer keynote and developer keynote, and that was it. And then the rest of the content is online. So, if you like that, then that was more the same this year. There was not, at least as far as I could see, any additional like fun and festivals for us. I know it was different for press. But yeah, I mean, kind of the same. So you can take that as you will.
So it's almost more of a press event then, really.
It is.
And that's kind of a shame when it's a developer conference. Or maybe what it is Google I/O, the event, is the press event. Google I/O, the developer conference, is the 200 videos that are released online, which, we had a conversation, Ron, I believe you were there with this conversation. We were talking with a Googler who helps coordinate all this stuff. And he basically said, like, look, prior to the pandemic, we had no reason to share all of our videos because it was all about the event, bringing people here. And if you were here, you got something special. Now, since the pandemic, they've seen more engagement on the actual developer content online than they feel like they ever saw with the event itself. And so I kind of got the impression that they were saying that he was saying, he didn't say it outright, but I really got the impression that this is kind of the way it's going to be. It's going to be a single day probably, and all this stuff online.
Yeah, I think that it's kind of gives them the best of both worlds, because they get the gathering event for people who want to go, but then people who either they can't afford to, or employers don't want to send them, or whatever it is, can watch at home and get it all. I mean, to me, it seems like they found their footing and they found what possibly works best for the community. I don't know, Mike. What do you think? What do you think, Jonathan? What do you think?
Go ahead, Mike.
So I do have a lot of thoughts about this, of course.
Yeah.
First thing, I do think this is the way of the future for big conferences. WWDC this year is similar. It's the same sort of thing where they're just having one day. It's mostly online. I do think this is the way. This is the first Google I/O I have not been to live. And it was actually the first one since last year attending, and it was kind of not that, wonderful an event that I kind of am just okay with it. And I'm okay with it in particular. Well, I'm okay with it because a lot of the content's online. The other thing I wanted to mention is Google is trying for the first time this year a follow-on event called IO Connect. And they do these things a lot, but this is kind of like the festival portion, perhaps, of Google I/O. It's in a few weeks in Miami, which is kind of not a great decision, but it's going to be like the booths and stuff that you would have set up at Google I/O, where you can ask DevRel questions, and the code labs and some things like that. So they're having that, but it's just at a different event.
Yeah, definitely a different event all around. Interesting. Okay, well, I missed seeing you at Google I/O, Mike. So
likewise.
Yeah. I will say, and I won't name names, but I did talk to some folks who work at Google who lament the lack of kind of in-person like interaction with developers, and that's always been a strong point of the Android community is that we have
part of the conversation,
the Googlers. Yeah, and it goes both ways, right? So we get access to the Google engineers to ask them questions about like either specific or broad things, but the people who work on the team also love hearing from us as well. And not to say that can't happen now, like for sure at the Connect events it will, but Mike, is the Connect event GDEs only, or is it like general? I'm sorry.
It's open to everybody.
So I think that's where they make it up, but especially with, I think Google like being a little more like about local events, it's like you're not going to see all your favorite Googlers, or like all of your favorite Googlers rather are not going to have as much interaction with you. So I think that is, we'll see how it goes with the Connect, and maybe like how both us as developers, third-party developers, and the Google folks feel about it. But it was kind of a big deal to kind of have this big event where all the Googlers, and as many devs as could make it, could all have access to each other and create that collaboration. So that's going to be the part that they need to work hard to make up for, I think. And I mean, maybe Connect will be that, but we'll see. Yeah. Keep my hopes up.
It won't be that. And I think, honestly, we won't have Google I/O like we had in the past, unfortunately.
Yeah, because, I mean, how many developers are going to go out to, fly out to the Bay Area, and stay at a hotel and everything for a single day that is taken up 2/3 by keynotes. Like, you know what I mean? It's just fundamentally, it's a very different event than it was before.
And the thing is, while we're on the top, like the keynote was very long. I mean, it was a more than 2 hour keynote, right? And Jason, I feel like over the years we've seen everything from the tight hour and a half to like a crazy multi-hour skydiving, you know, kind of extravaganza, right?
Yeah.
But like, and I do think like it'd be remiss without, and we're going to get into it in the details as we start breaking stuff down, but like the going joke that everyone made after the keynote for the rest of the day, myself included, was AI much? Right? Because after 2 hours of having those two letters hammered into your brain, it did get taxing and exhausting at some point, where just like it was very repetitive. And I'll give my friend credit, who was texting me during the event, and he was describing what they were doing as basically like, you know, he said it feels a lot like a restaurant, and they keep serving me vegetable dishes instead of what I ordered.
So then is Google not reading the room? Because I feel like everybody's talking about AI, but Google, I mean, and so just to kind of give you an idea of where this show is headed, the entire first block here is filled with AI news. I figured we'll just get the AI done, and then the rest of the episode we have non-AI stuff.
and before we get into the AI stuff, I mean, I think that the official kind of stuff, you know, AI, the theme of the entire event was AI. Mm-hmm. And my takeaway from it was Google's gotten beat up over the last 6 months, maybe 8 months, with ChatGPT and OpenAI kind of leading the pack of like what AI can do, and Midjourney and all these other, you know, all these other generative AI kind of startups that are in the place. And Google needed to reassert themselves and say, no, actually, we're a leader in the space. They, you know, Sundar opened it up by saying, you know, over 7 years of research into AI and development and stuff like that. Like, they kept on driving home the fact that they've been working on this. And it was almost, you know, like Shakespearean, and like the lady doth protest too much. Right? But it was definitely, they said it a lot.
They said it a lot. Well, we were joking while we were there. If we could take a transcript of the keynote and run it through Bard and tell Bard, tell me how many times the word, the acronym AI was spoken during this keynote, we figured it would probably be at least 1,000, if not more. So let's get into these things. And we already spent 10 minutes talking about the event itself, which I think is really important because it is, like we said, fundamentally different this year, and I think going forward. So let's focus a little bit of time on AI. We don't have to go into incredible detail on these things, but I think you'll start to see the picture that the theme wasn't just AI. It was how Google is bringing AI into the products and services that they already have. So you don't have to go to a destination to find AI. AI is where you already are. We kind of saw that a little bit with Assistant. We'll talk about that in a moment, but this is in other ways. And one of the major ways is that Google announced that it's bringing its generative AI to search. And that in and of itself is a really big deal because search has changed a lot. Google search has changed a lot over the years, but it's still really fundamentally been the same thing. The 10 blue links, ads, ads throughout, that experience has changed a little bit, but how things are structured haven't changed a heck of a lot, I would say, or either that or we've gotten used to it over time. Well, this is a really big difference. The key here, though, is that you have to opt into it. Once it's available, you'll have to opt into it. There is a wait list that you can get on to get access to this, but you opt into it via Search Labs. And basically, it's a chat bot integrated into search. It's basically Google's answer to Bing getting its own generative AI infusion a few months back. So this would be, and it's not Bard. So these are different things. They're different efforts. But the chatbot answers questions, that you ask it in real language style, and kind of integrates it above the fold. So above where the blue links are. So it really entirely shifts how Google's search product operates if you opt into it. And I can't help but think that, okay, right now it's opt in, but if this is the way, this keeps being spoken on the show. It's obviously a title. If this is the way, then will there be a time somewhere down the line where this is just kind of part of search, is that it's no longer this test thing that you have to opt into. It's part of how, the fabric of how we search is going forward. And I could totally see that. What do you all think? Do you think this is the way?
So we talked about this a little bit in the pre-show, and the only way that this becomes our normal pattern is if these chatbots return good results.
Yeah.
Because right now, when we search Google, we expect the correct answer, and like what we, when we were playing around with this before the show, we learned that none of these answers are correct.
Yes.
Not any of them. It's 90% incorrect.
Yeah. Well, a great example of this is that, Jason, while you were just talking about it, I went to Google Bard and I said, how many times did they say AI during the Google I/O keynote? And the first response I got was the word AI was mentioned 125 times during the Google I/O keynote. It was most often used in reference of new AI featured in products like Pixel 7a, Lambda, and Bard, blah, blah, blah. And you know how in Bard you can say view other drafts, right? So I click that. And the second draft says, according to the YouTube transcript of the Google I/O 2023 keynote, the word AI was said 43 times.
That is so wrong.
So what is right? And here's the thing is we're assuming that you type a prompt in and you get a response back, and there's a commitment to the answer you're given is truthful. Right. And this is a whole nother layer of science fiction here, where it's what if you're not getting correct answers back? You can't
trust the thing that you're using to find facts, which largely I'd say people use search to find facts about things that are posted somewhere that are factual. Maybe I'm wrong. I guess if you're searching for fiction, that would be wrong. But largely when I go to a search engine, it's because I have this thing that I want to know about. I want to know the details and I want it to be factual. And if the thing that you're using can't give you factual information, or rather gives you information that appears to be factual, but you only find out that it's not factual by actually researching it and spending the time to look into it, then is anybody going to use it? It's a good question.
There's also the element of so just like we've had so many conversations about generative AI, especially when it comes to art and kind of the aggregation and training on other people's art, and then you create something from other people's art, and whether that is theft of art, theft of ideas. It was really funny. We were watching the keynote. My husband was on chat with me. And I think there was one thing in the search results where it was aggregating. I think he was planning for a vacation, right? And it had aggregated information from 3 different blog posts. And he made a comment oh, great. So now that means that your content will just be sucked up by Google and spit out. And to be fair, they did have annotations there, but I do think there is kind of a feeling, it's not just something kind of more visual and necessarily inherently individualistic like art. But imagine your content just kind of gets sucked up and then kind of rolled into this generated content. And it's not as easy to attribute you. I mean, it's there, but that's not the first thing a person sees. And that's not the largest thing a person sees. And that feels less good to me. You know what I mean? I think it kind of goes with, okay, what is it pulling together? What is it synthesizing? Is it synthesizing fact? Is it synthesizing opinion? Is it synthesizing someone's creative work? Whether that is, a guide to hiking in the Sierras or something, or, an image. So I that kind of stuff also kind of makes me wonder as well. I know that it was interesting because they seem to be kind of trying to address some of these attribution / how can we tell if a thing is real, it was made by a person or made by generation. And that also seemed to pop up as a theme of privacy, of attribution, and of disclosure and that as well. But I don't know. I feel there's a lot of kinks to work out, but I can't imagine that conversational and kind of helping us try to do the nitty gritty stuff and the kind of low hanging fruit type tasks a day is going to go away. But I think there's a lot of work to be done.
No question, a lot of work to be done. 100%.
Indeed.
Wrong.
But a lot of the work has been done already. And what, at least during the keynote, Sundar Pichai kind of, he set it all up and he positioned, the kind of AI conversation, and it was all kind of framed around introducing Palm 2, or Palm, as I like to say, because it's capital P, lowercase a, capital L. Palm 2. Basically, this is Google's new language model, and it's smaller. It's the second version of Palm. That was the first one. Smaller in size than the previous version, but more efficient and with multilingual understanding, which is powerful. And it's different model scale for different devices. So whether you're using a smartphone or a browser or whatnot, and really it's the underlying tech that all this stuff is kind of built on. And actually, if you dig into the Google blog, there's actually a link to the scientific paper explaining Palm 2, the Palm 2 tech report, which is like a 100-page document that goes through and gives the background and all the methodology and all the stuff that came before. It is really, really kind of fascinating and way out of my realm of understanding. But so it was like, as they're telling the story of the keynote, it's like, hey, look at the underlying tech underneath all this, under the hood. We're developing it. We're advancing it. We're adapting it for the needs that we have for our various devices and our different kind of interfaces. And this is what it's all built on. They did push that multilingual support. They did announce, like, when they're, I don't know, I don't want to steal someone's thunder later on, but they're talking about Bard, how Bard is now going to be available in Korean and Japanese. And then I think they're planning on rolling out like 80 languages soon. So it's going to be multi-language, which has got to be even more, training in AI in English.
That's a strength that Google can leverage. I don't know, honestly, off the top of my head, ChatGPT and the other systems, how they are with multilingual support. But I mean, Google's been doing multilingual stuff for quite a while when it comes to its AI training. And
that was the second, and we're going to, Jason, you're going to talk about later on. This is a little bit of a tease, but like, for me, the theme of the keynote was AI, right? And what Google's doing in AI. But then what really kind of pushed it across the finish line for me is like, ChatGPT and OpenAI are doing great stuff, and they're building, APIs, underlying tech for other people to go build stuff. But Google's got a whole bunch of stuff that they can implement indirectly and get this stuff to, in front of users much faster than anyone else. And that's their strategic advantage. So the multilingual support and just like the applications that are ready to use this. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. But like, that's really, I think, going to be the game changer. Whether or not Palm 2 is better than OpenAI's model or not, that's open to debate. But you can't argue what the power that Google has in front of the AI now.
Yeah, if they can get the multilingual working well, and this is kind of a traditional thing where certain languages that are not, Romance languages, Western languages like Korean and Japanese, it already are hard enough to translate without sounding a little bit like robotic and unnatural and not idiomatic. Yeah. But I know they talked last year about improving the models for that, where they're not doing like a direct translation model. So if they compare that, like language model with, Bard, and with like the accessibility and locality of like, hey, we're putting Bard in our stuff and we have like all these features in our stuff. Like maybe that could be the secret sauce that can help them kind of not feel like they're chasing ChatGPT and banging all those other things. And which is like the strength that we've heard about all these different years at IO23, just got to synthesize, bring it all together, mix it all up. Synthesize. Yep. I keep saying that word. That was been my, that's like the new drinking game when it says synthesize. Shake up a drink or something. I don't know.
Yeah. But, speaking of Palm 2, actually, when this leads really well into yours, because this was something that you brought up that definitely wasn't on my radar because I'm not a developer, but this is actually very cool and I think based on the Palm 2 technology.
Yeah. So there is a descendant of Palm 2, Code Y, that is now powering an AI conversation-based helper inside of Android Studio. So during the developer keynote, which happened after the consumer keynote, this actually took me by surprise. But Jay Easton came out and announced that there's a studio bot. And I think there was about 30 seconds of a little bit of skepticism, like, oh no, why do I have a chat bot in my integrated development environment? But, and I think this goes into kind of what we were talking about earlier, it's actually really cool, y'all. So basically, you talk to StudioBot, you ask it natural language questions, and it can return to you all kinds of things. It can return to you information from documentation. It can return to you information about material guidelines, and it can return to you templates like code templates. It can help you refactor things from, say, Java to Kotlin. It can even tell you about when you have a crash or an error. It can tell you what that error is, what it means. And for kind of low hanging fruit, things that are just like little, oh, you forgot to turn on the internet permissions, it can do some of those fixes for you. And I actually really love this. And the thing here, which makes me super excited about this, where I'm a little bit, kind of like Debbie Downer on other things, is that all of these things like refactoring templates, even documentation, and even like things like static analysis, where we have someone telling us, hey, you shouldn't do that in your code, exists already. It's just that now we have a conversational interface for it. So you can just ask, rather than you Googling and figuring out what to Google. And again, Studio's in beta, so it's not quite as like fluent as say Bard or something, but imagine like not having to Google or open up like 10 or 15,000 different websites. You just ask the Studio, and it is pulling on all of these information sources that we already have. It's factual, or not quite factual, but kind of, these are all kind of resources that we use day to day. It's just in one place. So based on Palm 2 and Cody. And I thought that we were done with AI and chatbots.
But
the consumer keynote was
only
done.
Just begun.
But no, developers, you get a chatbot, and you get a chatbot, and you get a chatbot.
I'm curious to know, Mike, I want to throw this over to you. Obviously I'm curious to know what you think too, but Mike, as one of the developers on this panel, is an AI-informed chatbot, like, is that an answer to something that you actually want? Or are you getting Clippy vibes? Like, I'm curious to know where you stand on this.
So I kind of am, and it's a good segue, because that's kind of what I was going to mention. I will start this by mentioning that I currently use GitHub Copilot, which is AI-assisted development. Mm-hmm. It's different, though, in that it basically provides like advanced IntelliSense, like code completion. And it's really magic for a lot of things, like Wen was just mentioning, like the template stuff that is just like boilerplate, code comments. It kind of like writes all my comments for me. I don't know how it kind of knows, but those things are magic.
That sounds awesome. Yeah.
I don't like having a chat interface to that is of value, but it's kind of different. So I kind of have to get used to it. There are times when Copilot doesn't tell me what I need, and I still have to go search for it. And maybe this would be that solution. Like, right. Copilot's not giving me what I want. I ask StudioBot, hey, bot, how do I make this text bold?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So, and I welcome all the assistance I can get. I welcome my AI robot overlords, and if they make my job easier, bring it.
Well, and that's what, and we talked about that in the interview with Dave and Samir, and the context of this is that like there's so much Sturm and Drang over AI and how AI is taking over, and like I've dealt with it in my day job, like where I'm talking, like I'm trying to be innovative and trying to cultivate my team to be aware of technology and how can we use it as tools, and like a lot of folks' first reaction, and I wouldn't say Luddite, but is very like, I don't want to lose my job to a robot, and robots can't do my job, but like the great example, or the great kind of, the point that Mike makes in terms of saving time. And we talked about it on the revelation I had, like 150 years ago, it took a week to do the laundry, and then they invented the washing machine, and now it takes 2 hours. Right. Mm-hmm. And so what do you do with that time back? And from a developer standpoint, how much, Mike, how much time will you get back with these tools?
It's not too, it's a bit of, it's not quite the same evolutionary step, but if you imagine like how many years ago we had punch cards, right? And so you spent most of your time punching out the dang punch cards. And part of, this is all for like modern tooling, even things like Kotlin and things like that. It takes away the drudgery so that you can focus on high level things. And time is kind of one of those resources that developers never have enough of. Mm-hmm. And so anything that saves me time helps. And I think what is interesting about the chat is that, like Google has touted some of these, the part I think that's interesting about conversational is that the conversational bot keeps context. So it's like that shopping thing that they always mention where you're saying, hey, show me some pants, right? And then out of the results, you can say, okay, show me this one, but in orange, it keeps the context of what you're talking about. So it saves you from, having to figure out, okay, how do I filter these results and not lose them. You know what I'm saying? Like it's building on, the previous thing that you asked, just like any other conversation that you have with a human being. And I think that's what's interesting about Studio Bot versus, as Mike mentioned, Copilot and stuff like that too, is that maybe by using a bot that can keep that context, you can say something like, hey, what is this error and how do I fix it? Rather than, having to copy paste a stack trace, go out, search for Google, you get back some answers, and then you have to kind of individually copy paste, the kind of things. It's like there's a lot more of a manual process there. And it's just like, as you said, washing the clothes rather than, me taking like the clothes like out like the basket and like smacking them on the rock. I don't know what that might be like analogous to in coding, but someone like, the spin cycle does that for me. And so similarly, like these things like copy paste, put it in Stack Overflow, look over here, that gets taken care of for me. So I can actually worry about architecture and UI and all that kind of jazz. So I'll stop talking now, but I do think that's the power of it.
Interesting. We have, I'm looking at a rundown. I'm like, we have so much more to talk about with AI. I think I'm going to do an make an on-the-fly decision and kind of change things around. So that might be a little bit inside baseball. Ron, why don't you throw to the ad, and I'm going to do some restructuring because we have a lot more AI to talk about, and we do have to go to an ad, and we're going to get to all the really important stuff. So Ron, take it away.
And yes, we will take a break in All About AI to tell you about how this episode of All About Android is brought to you by Cashfly. And listen, we've all been making internet content for so many years, and we know for a fact that viewers don't hang around for videos that buffer. Shoppers abandon carts on e-commerce sites that are slow, and gamers leave bad reviews when the latency is high. Be ready for those fluctuations with Cashfly. Customers expect a faultless experience when engaging with content on any device, anytime, anywhere in the world. Building trusted CDN relationships since 1999, Cashfly has held a track record for high-performing, ultra-reliable content delivery for 2 decades. Cashfly pioneered the use of TCP Anycast in 2002, an innovation that CDNs continue to build upon. And quality of experience is the single most critical metric when serving content simultaneously to a large and distributed audience on a global scale. And your delivery stack can be your secret weapon. With Cashfly, you'll get ultra-low latency video streaming that will deliver video to more than 1 million concurrent users. You'll also get lightning-fast gaming, which will deliver downloads faster with zero lag, glitches, or outages. Mobile content optimization that offers automatic and simple image optimization so your site loads faster on any device. And Cashfly is the only CDN built for throughput, delivering rich media content up to 10 times faster than traditional delivery methods and 30% faster than other major CDNs. Plus, you never have to pay for service overlap again. You can get flexible month-to-month billing for as long as you need it and discounts for fixed terms once you're happy. Design your own contract when you switch to Cashfly. With more than 3,500 clients in over 80 countries, organizations consistently choose Cashfly for scalability, reliability, and unrivaled performance. And you might be wondering, how do we know all this? Well, we've been using Cashfly for over a decade, and we wouldn't have it any other way. Learn how you can get your first month free at cashfly.com. That's cashfly.com, and we thank them for keeping the content flowing fast and right on, getting to our viewers. Thank you, Cashfly. We appreciate it.
Cashfly is awesome. Been with them for so very long. They are responsible for so much of what we do. So thank you, Cashfly. Okay. I, through the magic of on-the-fly producing, have reordered the doc. So we're going in. The show's not going to be any longer. It's just we have more stuff to talk about with AI. I thought we could do it all in one block, but it was clearly too much. So let's keep this show rolling here and continue with the AI discussion, because I think this is all of these topics are actually really important. I didn't want to do it short, give it short service. So first of all, you alluded, Ron, to the ways in which Google is taking these many different AI efforts and integrating them into services. And when I have a couple of examples of this, and there's a really interesting discussion that we can get into around this, but just real quick to set the scene. Gmail getting generative AI features called Help Me Write. This will be a feature integrated into Gmail. I think you have to opt into it, that you could say, like, I need to write an email to this person that says, I'm not going to make it on time. I got caught up in traffic, but I want to reschedule for next week. Check my calendar for 3 open time slots or whatever. And then you generate it, help me write it, and boom, instead of me having to write this entire email, it sends that person all the information. You can expand it, contract it, that sort of stuff. Really weird. Messages, Magic Compose, which we alluded to last week on the episode, where you can rewrite text messages. So you put in a short text message and you tell it the style that you want it to rewrite in, and it creates a new text message from what you've already put there. Maps, getting an immersive mode that flies through. This looked really cool. That flies through the route that you're navigating to give you kind of a virtual tour of what that route is going to look like. It's almost like you get to experience your route. They use AI and computer vision to kind of merge together this experience so you can see what that route is going to look like. Photos, getting a new magic editor, which is kind of similar to some of the AI editing features that we've seen in Google Photos and on Google Camera before. But this is almost like that taken to the next level. It's like the example they have is this kid sitting on a bench, and it's like, we want the bench to be more centered in the photo. We want the clouds to be bluer. We want to remove, this, that, and the other thing. I mean, it's just like all these edits being made to the image that normally, again, it's an example of how AI is doing things that normally we would have needed to be skilled in the feature set of an app like Photoshop in order to do all this stuff. And it would take a while to make it all happen. And now it's like you click it and you tell it what you want it to do, and it does the thing. So I think the question there, the interesting perspective that I've been talking a little bit with Micah Sargent here at Twit, he brought this up, and ever since then I've been thinking about it, is the authenticity or lack thereof when we have AI systems writing all of our communications for us. He mentioned to me that using an AI to write a text message, he's like, I hate it. It was like, I want to know when I'm having having contact with someone, communicating with someone, that we're actually communicating, and it isn't a robot or a computer that's kind of standing in for me. And I don't know, there's something there. Does that impact you guys at all? Like, how do you feel about that?
I mean, personally, I think that texting is such I'm going to spend more time telling the AI what to say in response than I can just text it myself.
Bursts, right?
Exactly. That's my thought.
Yeah. What do you think, Wynn?
I do think there might be some room for this, but this is kind of like by case basis, or your mileage might vary. It was really funny because not in text. So maybe this invalidates the argument, but I think sometimes we do talk to different people, like maybe whether it's introducing ourselves to like a new person that we want to engage in with business or something. I don't know. Sometimes like I know my husband and I often have arguments about, okay, I want to engage this landscaper, and some people do actually still do a lot of like work and kind of contracting through, text, through like word of mouth, through recommendations. So I don't know. I feel like I'm just very focused on, well, sometimes people are just not sure how to approach people or not sure how to sound like not weird when you just, text someone out the blue. So I could see that there's probably places where this might just help someone kind of like write that first intro text or be able to kind of analyze things. I don't know. I think it almost feels like a pre-runner to something else, like an experiment to let people, hey, here's Magic Compose, play around with it and see if it can be of use to you, or even get like, human use feedback on whether you ask it to zhuzh up your text and it accidentally insults the person that you're talking to. I don't know. Like I just feel like that it's like a starter, it's like a little test bed that they're sticking their toe into the water on to kind of more broadly do that.
And this isn't the starter, because that was one thing that I mentioned to, isn't necessarily the starter. I mentioned to Micah, like I already on my text messages that come in, it gives me those little 1-word answers. Yes, not really. Blah, 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 and I do use those. So is that me using an inauthentic communication because the computer presented that, or is that just me going quicker to the thing I was already going to say? Mike, how do these features land for you?
Okay, so this is great all about Android moment because I want to call out Ron for the example he gave us before the meeting about he wrote a love letter to his wife using Chat GBT. So I just did it actually myself.
I did it in Bard, just to note. I did it in Bard as
well, actually, just to be perfectly clear and on the record. So I actually just did it while I'm kind of sitting here, and it is remarkably good and feels very authentic to talking about, how she makes me a better man. It's very generic, but I think I'm going to get, some good kisses tonight after she reads this.
I did it. Yeah, I did it. So as part of the announcement, they said they were going to embed the little magic wand or the sparkly icon or whatever in Gmail. I signed up for it. It got enabled to my Gmail account. And so the first thing, I opened up the prompt and I said, help me write an email to my wife about how much I love her or something like that, whatever it said. And it wrote a very, to Mike's point, a very believable kind of thing, and I sent it to her and she came in and she was like, oh my God, that was so nice. And I was grinning and she's like, you didn't write it, did you? I was like, no. Bard did it. But and like the examples they gave in the demo, like Dave Burke of Google, who we talked to in the interview that you can listen to at the end of the show, did the live demo of it. And it was like, I want to send an email to someone congratulating them doing a good job. And like, it's this idea of like short attention span approach. Like I want to email Jason and thank him for doing all about Android and being so awesome. And it will write this whole thing and insert it. And it's almost like greeting cardification of our emails.
That's exactly where my mind was at. Right? Exactly. Yeah. You pulled the words out of my brain, Ron, because as I was hearing this, I started to kind of really clued into the fact that like we already kind of do this. We already put our control over what we say about how we feel about someone, just using this as an example, in the hands of someone else. We go into a store, we pull a card off the shelf and we read it and we go, oh, those words match what I want to say. So I'm going to buy this and I'm going to take these words and offer them as if they are mine. And I mean, obviously they're not. It's a greeting card, Are we losing the skill or the training to write those words yourself sincerely? Like, because there was a time in our civilization in 1835 when someone growing up said, I want to be a poet. I want to be a writer. I want to learn how to do all this sort of stuff. And like, when was the last time you met somebody? Well, actually, I know somebody who's a poet, but still, but I'm just saying like the going back, and I know this is counter to what we were just saying about programming, about the chatbot in Dev Studio and how that making it easier. Does it make my life any more efficient to have a AI bot write a love email to my wife? I don't know. Like, I'm looking for ways to introduce this into my life and make it realistic. I will say another example of how I used Bard recently was I was at, it wasn't in email, but it was just like, and the idea of them integrating it into email, into Workspace, into Docs, into spreadsheets and stuff like that, I think is really compelling because like I was on a work call the other day and we were brainstorming, to come up with a new product kind of naming type thing. And I was in Bard and I was just like, give me suggestions for a product and with these attributes or whatever. And it gave me a list and none of them were viable. But of like the 10 things it suggested, at least 3 triggered sparks amongst the people I was talking to that led to possibly viable options. Ah, there you go. Yeah.
So I don't know.
Launchpad for something else.
I don't know. We're all people that talk on podcasts. So there's a level of comfort with discourse, with words. And I know maybe this is just me kind of trying to optimistically apply this, but I can't imagine like so many times in my life where I was less confident enough and I had some social anxiety where, like maybe if I wanted to like let someone know something, whether that was something serious or important or something where I just couldn't find the words or was worried that it sounded aggressive or not, whether it sounded like sensitive or not to like whatever the situation was. And I mean, I'm a person who very often when I send someone something, even if it's kind of innocuous, I'd be like, go to my husband, go to my sister. Hey, does this sound like, mean or whatever? So and to kind of some of the point that you all said, like at some point you kind of realize that it's not, that there's a level of facsimile and artificiality, right? Like So I can't help but think that if someone, really cares about crafting their own words, that they hopefully would still do it. But I don't know, maybe that's just me being optimistic, but I do think there is probably a place for this. It's just not maybe what we expect, or maybe what, especially us as people that are people creating content who show up and put our faces and our voices on the interwebs, and that who write for a living might maybe like we're not the audience for this per se. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, when I think about it, like that feature, I'm super torn, because as they were showing it off, the Gmail is the one that I'm primarily thinking about, the Write for Me Gmail feature. I was like, yeah, there are emails that I write that are very, very much the same between every person that I send it to. I don't copy top to bottom, but I write basically the same things with slightly different words, invites for shows and everything. Like there's only so many ways you can invite, 20 people a week onto our shows and have it be differentiated. And why differentiate when the facts need to be there and all these kinds of things. So, but at the same time, like I don't feel right handing the keys over to an AI to write all of my communication for me. But I bet you there's somebody out there that's willing to go that far and willing to say, you know what? I'm not writing another email ever. I'm just going to help me write what email I want to write and do some light editing every single time. I guarantee people are going to use that.
Honestly, it's not that like it reminds me of when I would ask a professor to write a recommendation letter for me, or a teacher, and they say, write it for me and give it to me and I'll edit it and then send it. Like I do it at work all the time. I tell people, I'm gonna write this up, send it to me, I'll make the edits and then send it and put it, kind of like, I don't know. It's like I'm vacillating between it, because I can see that. Like, Jason, you're right. Like there's a lot of redundant emails that I write often that have to do with the same thing. And it's easier to do the heavy lifting of the work and then just edit it to make it sound in my voice than do it all from scratch, So I don't know. I think there is value to it, but I don't think it's replacing the thought I put into what I do.
That was something that the big reaction that I saw online during the keynote, they were doing live coverage here, Leo and Jeff Jarvis. And so I was logged into the Discord and kind of live blogging my own thoughts and everything. And there were a lot of people really commenting on kind of the blandness and the sameness of the AI responses and how it's, oh, really, it couldn't get more creative. And when I was thinking about it, I was like, yeah, but how much of our communication that we do on a regular daily basis is very bland and is very, you know what I mean? Like there's so much of our communication. We like to think that we're really creative and everything like that, but so much of business is derived around these very set in stone processes and things. It's just a reflection of how we write. So if it's
thank you for your time. I look forward to hearing from you.
Being us.
Best wishes. Yeah.
So anyways, so it's interesting. I think this is, when we're talking about AI and ethics and best practices, these are things that I think businesses are going to have to start making decisions around. Do we allow our employees to to use these AI tools to write emails? Or do we say, hey, no, that's not okay because of secrets, or because it doesn't impart a human quality to the conversation, and we're a business and we want people to feel like we're connecting with them, and these systems remove the human, these things are going to have to be discussed and figured out on a company-wide basis. I think that's in our future. Anyways, we could talk about this forever. We have a few more things before we get to the next break. So I guess this kind of falls into similar territory. Oh,
sorry. Are we talking about Android 14 now? Or are we talking about the other thing?
No, we're talking about the wallpapers. We're in the wallpapers.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry. I know I shifted things around.
Sorry,
so
my bad. Yeah. So, not that we don't have enough generative content and things to discuss already, but Google is kind of aiming its generative AI at wallpaper. And so there's a couple of like interesting elements to this, right? So there is the ability to create like a wallpaper from, whatever emojis that you would like. But in more googly flavor, there's also the ability to kind of leverage AI to create cinematic wallpapers that kind of like, like, ooh, ah. And so, yeah, it's kind of, and as well as, let's see, what else do we have? Oh yeah. And as well as kind of more, if you think about more like Mid-Journey Stable Diffusion, you can prompt Google to create this, whatever your mind can prompt, it will also similarly do a generative art wallpaper. So emoji wallpapers, cinematic wallpapers from your photos, where it kind of analyzes it and gives a static image motion, and generative AI wallpaper for if you want to have a wallpaper of yourself as a D&D character. There you go.
That's kind of neat, I guess. I mean, but again, it's wallpaper.
It's wallpaper. Yeah. So I think that was the one thing that I feel like, so like a bunch of us Android devs were in a chat, and I think we got a little bit snarky about this point. Now, to be fair, like all of these are really cool in isolation, but isolation is kind of thing. It's wallpaper.
Yeah.
So I think it's like a small example of like a big technology. But
yeah.
Are they pushing this because they want to push the dynamic theming part of Material 3 that's driven by your wallpapers?
It could be. That's a really good point. Like giving people more
reason to switch your wallpaper.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, it's Material U's core promise. If I, based on what I feel like I know about Material U, is making your device as customized to you as possible within the framework of what they've set out. And the generative AI system really allows you to get as unique as you want, because literally that image doesn't exist before you put in your prompt and it comes back with something. That's about as unique of a wallpaper as you can come up with. Mike, unique. Mike, you've been spending a lot of time with generative AI and prompts and everything like that. Like, are people like, how do you think this is going to go? Because I mean, this is going to be much more consumer facing. There's going to be a lot of people that have never used something like a ChatGPT or a Mid-Journey to use this system. I have to imagine Google's going to make it friendly, right?
Well, I don't know. So I don't know if this is Google integrations with Firefly, but what I will say is using these generative text to image tools is so much fun. It kind of gives you weird stuff, but it reminds me of the early days of Google search, where you just were kind of searching for stuff just to see what it would give you. It's really delightful and really fun to play with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it looked like a lot of fun, and having it kind of baked into Android 14, which we're going to talk about after the next break in a little bit more detail. But at the same time, can't help but just kind of chuckle a little bit, because I think the wallpaper as feature ship has kind of sailed. You know what I mean? It kind of felt like, oh no, we're back to wallpapers. There's really not a whole lot going on here, is there? If like the wallpapers
is it a gateway drug to more generative AI because it's easy, it's simple, we won't disrupt their life, disrupt your life. So here,
I think
generative AI.
This came up in our interview with Dave and Samir as well. Also, so go back and listen to it at the end, and you know, and you can hear Dave in his own words saying it. But they wanted to give it a practical. Like, this is something that actually people can do on their phone immediately and see the power of it. So when I think you're right in terms of like a gateway drug, it's like it hurts no one. It gives you a chance to express yourself. And here's the thing, in terms of this, you could do this and not thank the AI for it, right? Like, you don't need to position this as AI. You could position this as Material U and all that sort of stuff, and then let the under the hood people be like, oh my God, it's their AI thing doing it. Like, you could just be like, type this in, you can make your own wallpaper type, you know, like, but they chose to position, you know, like, so it's interesting.
But of course they're going to make it an AI thing, because AI is very now, and Google's mission was to prove to you, hey, we've been doing this a long time. We deserve to be in the conversation when it comes to AI.
Exactly.
Which is a perfect segue to you, Ron, because you linked an article about the assistant and how it was missing.
Yeah. So thank you, Jason. We talked a couple of months ago about how Google was shifting a lot of key staff members from the Google Assistant team to the Bard and AI team. And then as we went through the keynote, I forget who said it, but at some point I was talking to somebody and someone's like, I don't think they said assistant once in the presentation at all. And we're like, Jason, it might have been you actually. Like, I was like, yeah, you're right. They didn't say it at all. And sure enough, I'm referring to, there's an article in Wired that I saw that hit today that was, the curious case of the missing Google Assistant. And it's just basically saying how, the focus was on AI and Assistant has been the thing that they've built their AI interface around, and it was gone. It was just absent from the keynote, and I would love to know why or how or whatever, and why that choice was and what it means to the future of Assistant. So we'll see. I mean, maybe they're going to get rid of it, right? And then it just becomes how you interact with Google stuff, and it's just a native part of it. And it could be. I've heard some people speculate that people don't like Alexa anymore. They're down on Siri, like they're down on Assistant, so don't focus on it. But yeah. Who knows what the reasoning was?
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting. I mean, especially when you consider, as we have talked about on this show in recent months with this whole AI thing that's happening right now, Google was there. They were there, many years ago. They fired off the voice assistant trend, I would say, largely. They were very accessible when it came to that, and they proved, I think, in that first go, Google Assistant was the winner. Certainly it wasn't Siri. Assistant for the longest time gave you what you were looking for, and I would say it's broken down in recent years, but Google was there. It had the pedigree to really dominate with AI. So it is telling that there was no real assistant news. I went to just now the Google blog, the keyword blog, and the article's 100 things we announced at IO 2023, 100 things. And I did a search on the page for assistant. It appears twice. Number 14 is, thanks to machine learning technology, assistant voice typing on Pixel tablet is almost 3 times faster than regular typing. Okay. And then the last one is number 99 out of 100. With the new App Actions test library and the Google Assistant plugin for Android Studio, it's now easier to code, easier to emulate the user experience, to forecast user expectations, and blah, blah, blah. So not a whole lot going on with Assistant at Google I/O this year, even according to Google, in 100 things that were announced, only 2 very small things.
It really is like a Sherlock murder mystery with the curious case of the missing Google Assistant. And then we had, I don't know if we talked about it specifically, but there was that story months ago about losing $10 billion for Amazon. So it's just all nefarious, right? Like one assistant loses $10 billion. Another one is like missing from the scene. What's happening to all the assistants? Where are they going? What's happening? But I mean, like,
they're being promoted. Like the thing. Assistants are no longer assistants to others. They're commanding their own ship. I don't know.
Yeah. Just pivot. Pivot.
Yeah, the assistants are pivoting. That's what they're doing.
Pivot.
They're entering the Witness Protection Program and becoming chatbots.
That's it. Okay, let's take a break, and we will come back and talk about even more I/O news that doesn't really have a whole lot to do with AI, at least not directly. Watch it prove us wrong when we get there. But I did want to take a moment and tell you a little bit about us. We here at Twit do these shows because we love technology. We also know that you, well, at least we hope you love technology as much as we do. We are dedicated to bringing you awesome content about technology. It's what we've been doing. I mean, Leo's been doing it since 2005 with the This Week in Tech podcast. That was when it started, 2005, like almost 20 years ago. Isn't that crazy? We've been in the business for a very, very long time. And we create partnerships with brands that we trust. So any of the brands that we talk about on the shows, that sponsors, we have worked with them to select the brands that we actually like, that we agree with, that we approve, that we use. A lot of thought goes into that. And it's kind of our job to introduce you, the audience, to those brands as a result. Half of our listeners are in management positions or above. 65% are involved in their company's decision making. So we have a lot of high-level folks watching our shows, and that just means that our audience is really raising the bar for us and our partners, this explaining why our network continues to stay at the top of delivering this tech news that's reliable and engaging. Partnering with Twit, if you happen to be in that position, means that you're going to get the gold standard in podcast advertising with valuable services. We have a whole suite of valuable services, a full service continuity team that supports everything from copywriting to graphic design. We've got embedded ads. Those are unique ads. They're unique every single time, and we always over deliver on our impressions. Onboarding services, ad tech with pod sites, which is free for direct clients, and detailed reporting along with that. You get courtesy commercials that are shareable across social media and landing pages. And we have a bunch of other free goodies, things like mentions in our weekly newsletter sent to thousands of fans, bonus ads, social media promotion. We really want to make partnering with Twit appealing and worth it, worth the time, worth the money. And, we want to work with you. We want long-term partners that want to grow with us. And we have partners who have shared with us on their own kind of how they feel about it. Tim Broom is the founder of IT Pro TV. And, if you've been listening or watching our shows for the last 10 years, they've been with our network for 10 years. He said, we would not be where we are today without the Twit network. Mark McCreary, the CEO of Authentic, has partnered with Twit for 16 years, said the feedback from many advertisers over 16 years across a range of product categories is that if ads and podcasts are going to work for a brand, they're going to work on Twit shows. That's all to say, we know what we're doing and we want to work with you. So if you're ready to elevate your business, reach out to us. You just have to email us, advertise@twit.tv, and you can work with us, work with twit.tv's world-class audience. You can reach them. That's what it's all about. That's advertise@twit.tv. All right, we've got more news, but Ron, you have something.
I was going to say, before we moved on, I did ask Bard, why didn't Google talk about Assistant at I.O.? And I just wanted to share what it said. It said there are a few possible reasons why Google didn't talk about Assistant at I.O. It said the Assistant is already mature. It's been around for several years now. It's already a very powerful and capable product. As a result, it may not be seen as a priority. Second option was Google's focusing on other things. They're always working on new products and features. It's possible they're prioritizing other things at I.O. For example, they talked about new hardware products like the Pixel 7a and new AI-powered features like Bard. And the last one is Google's facing competition. Another number of other companies are developing voice assistants, such as Amazon's Alexa and Apple Siri. As a result, Google may be feeling pressure to focus on developing new features. And they said ultimately only Google knows for sure why they didn't talk about Assistant at I.O. this year. However, it's likely a combination of factors played a role in that decision. So,
okay.
Bard is like a part of my life now. I love it. So.
Oh, Bard. Okay, so let's see here. I'm trying to make sense of all the reorganizing that I did. I think we are at Android 14, and when this falls in your lap, this was kind of an interesting thing. And again, we will tease forward to the interview that you will catch after the credits with Dave Burke and Samir Samat, because they even said it. I mean, much of that interview is about Android 14, but they even said like Android 14 is kind of an under the hood update. What are your thoughts? Like, what do we got to look forward to?
Yeah. So I'd like to call, I feel like a lot of lately, Android has been what we would call a dot release. So when we version things in developer world, very often we save like whole numbers, like 1.0 for like big flashy things that you would get marketing about. And then kind of like the nice, like workhorsey fixing bugs, minor like updates, things that aren't really like flashy and awesome that you want a whole like keynote for, but they're still very important, like tend to be like dot releases. So 1.1, 1.2. So it kind of feels a little bit like kind of like that, right? That maybe the reason that Android 14 was not so mentioned is that it's just doing the hard work under the hood. But I mean, like each individual thing in isolation might not seem so crazy and awesome, but in aggregate, it's a lot of much better experiences in small ways because the small things add up, right?
Yeah.
So just to kind of go down this list. And again, I thought it was great, and to give Dave Burke a lot of credit when we asked him about Android 14 and not to spoil anything. The man was on. He was on message, and he had a lot of great things to say about Android 14. But yeah, just to give like the folks here like an understanding of what you would see in Android 14 once it comes out would be things like clock customization for the lock screen. Again, like a small like quality of life, fun little enhancement. Maybe not necessarily worth the keynote, though. I don't know. It'll kind of be kind of fun. But little things like data privacy. So they actually, one thing that was really important is that when a dev changes the way they share data, like if they share data with like a third party, you get to know about it. Very important stuff. Again, not the most flashiest thing that you'd want to make a Super Bowl commercial about, but super important. Camera flash notifications. So if you're the kind of person who goes heads down a lot and you really, really, really need some extra, like a nudge when you get a notification, you're going to ask Android 14 to flash the camera flash. Health Connect is actually getting integrated into the OS, and you're going to get easier access for hearing and controls, as well as warnings when you listen to high volume for an extended period of time. So kind of wellness and well-being, wellness and health of users. There's something really cool called smart file transfer that allows, developers like us to basically create like if you're downloading your favorite podcast or whatever, like a YouTube video, if you start that transfer, the OS will do the work of making sure to reschedule or pause it if you lose connectivity. So again, that's like a really awesome feature. Just kind of hard to make a keynote around. But it will be there for developers as well as third-party support for passkeys. Not that we've ever talked about passkeys on this show or passwords in general.
No, definitely not.
But if we did, we would have to definitely mention that Android 14 is going to give passkey support to third-party developers. And then there's, this is very developer-y, but Art is going to be upgraded to Art 14, which gives support for Java 17, which is really awesome. Kotlin, jargon, but this is really cool stuff for us devs. It kind of allows us to write things a little bit better and with more modern technology under hood. More paraphrasing. And something that we talked about last week with Michelle is, again, that forced letterboxing, vertical boxing on larger screens, partial screen share for portion screen, and ultra HDR support. So, I mean, there is so much in Android 14 that unfortunately, or by design, is getting overshadowed by AI. But I mean, I'm getting letterboxed. I'm getting vertical boxed. I'm getting vertical
pillar boxing is what it's called.
Pillar boxing. Pillar boxing.
Yeah,
yes.
we got an email to that effect.
Oh, we did.
Thank you, Matt. I think it was Matt. But yeah, thank you, Matt, for letting us know that I'm being pillar boxed right now. But yeah, all of these things are just honestly really great. Oh, I forgot to mention share sheets, because again, we've never ever talked about share sheets on this show or complained about them at length. But I mean, yeah, just a lot of great stuff. Anything that I just ran down really quickly that sounds super exciting to anyone that they wish was in a keynote?
Well, yeah, Mike, I'm curious to kind of hear your thoughts, because I think I/O, at its core, I don't have to remind you of this, it's a developer conference, and so many people are there because of the Android, the Android developments. But again, this was kind of a light. I mean, the keynote hardly talked about Android. I mean, it was hardly even a topic. In 2 hours, you barely heard anything about Android. How do you feel about how Android 14 is shaping up from your perspective, and how Google is choosing to or not to emphasize it? What do you think?
So I think that Android is fairly mature, so we're not ever going to be looking at these drastic changes. It's all going to be small things, but the small things that I think are trending really positive for Android and that are really empowering for us as Android users are all the permissions and the control over data. That there were some examples of that in that list. But us being in control of how our information is shared and understanding that is really powerful. And I feel like there's a lot of moves for the OS to kind of control that. That's really useful.
Yeah. Interesting. I mean, we're going to blink, and Android 14 is going to be releasing to our Pixel devices, those of us who have a Pixel. So you're not going to have to wait too long. I still have yet to actually get on the beta train. And this could be the longest that I've gone in many years of not being on the beta train. But life has been busy. But I do feel the tug in that direction. I feel like I need to kind of hop on the train and
Tonight's tonight. Go ahead.
Tonight.
Do it tonight. I like it.
The community wants you to, Jason, just to be clear.
I will do it, and then I'll be like,
on behalf of everyone.
It looks the same, Yep. It's so under the hood. But anyways, so yeah, I will probably do that soon. But that's and then what is it? Is it upside down cake? That's where we're at now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Upside down cake. Okay. Good to know. I don't know if there's even an Easter egg that we can look forward to. Oh, there's the upside down cake.
Yeah,
upside down cake does not look delicious to me.
By the way, that is Alex and Chris on the Android team, and they actually made this upside down cake as part of like an Android developers video. So if you on the audio stream, you're going to see two lovely gentlemen that work at Android holding up an upside down cake. And if you actually are interested in watching a couple of people on the Android team make an upside down cake, you should go to Android developers YouTube channel. But yeah, they actually made that, so good for them.
I don't know that I've ever had an upside down cake. It does not look delicious to me. Like it kind of looks like a fruit
Well,
cake.
Much like the Android 14 beta, don't judge it until you try it, Jason.
Okay,
so
all
tonight,
right, fair enough.
Tonight,
there you
so this
go.
is what you're going to do tonight after the show. You're going to start up. You're going to install the beta on your phone, and then you're going to go have an upside down cake, and then it'll be great. So
where do I get an upside down cake? Victor,
get
me an upside down cake.
Oh, God.
Wait, go
one every week.
I was thinking like when it was Oreo.
Generative AI.
Oh god, no! I never again. Anyways, so I saw something really cool while we were at Google I/O, and I don't know if you remember this a couple of years ago when part of Google's announcement at I/O was something called Project Starline, and this was peak of the pandemic, right? So we're all at home. The Google I/O presentation was all, it was virtual, and I think most of it was pre-recorded, that sort of thing. Maybe this must have been the year where they had the like outdoor kind of small stage with like little groupings of people sitting in random places in the yard and stuff. It was very strange. But anyways, they announced Project Starline then, which was not necessarily a product that you could get, but a product that they were working with and testing. And it was essentially take a video conference, like a Meet or a Zoom video conference, but put it in a room with a screen that is very, very large and three-dimensional. So it's a three-dimensional view. You had to be in a fixed position, looking at the screen, talking to someone else who has that technology on the other side of the internet, wherever they're calling from. And these cameras that would essentially turn you and your presence into a three-dimensional object. And I say object because it's not just straight video. There is, of course, a computer that's processing those images and making it so that when you're looking in the screen, you're actually making eye contact with the other person. It's three-dimensional. It's human size. And so the idea was then, to make something that's not just you looking on your laptop and chatting with someone, like you're actually kind of in the same room, even though you're not. I was very intrigued by this. I know a lot of people were. Like it seemed like one of those like big promises, can it deliver sort of things. And they had the current version, the current iteration of this technology at Google I/O. And somehow I was able to talk myself into sitting down in it, even though they were totally booked up for most of the day. But I kept being persistent. It was like, I have to check this out. And I ended up speaking with a couple of the founders of the technology and was able to sit in the room on one end. And then in the other room was, I wish I remembered his name, but the guy who I was talking with. But I should clarify, all of that video was being sent out into the vast internet. It wasn't like they were connected directly. So I was getting the actual experience. It was all happening in real time online. And, it was updated technology. So the cameras, there were less of them. I have to say, it was really impressive. Like Not that I think that everybody's going to have these, this specialized video conferencing system in their homes. Yeah, that's exactly what it looked like. But it was really, really cool. Like the kind of the impact of it was very convincing. I'm looking at a screen, but it's 3-dimensional. The person that's in front of me is exactly, the right scale. At one point, he held up an apple, and I feel like I could have just reached out and grabbed the apple, and the scale to the apple on the screen to my hand right in front of me was perfect. He ended up putting his fist out, and I gave him a fist bump. Even though I couldn't feel his fist, like my brain was really messed up. I was like, I want to feel like I expect to feel the fist. It looked that real. And the eye contact of the experience was really something. I was really impressed by it.
Yeah, so I don't remember the name of the guy you did the demo with, but you and I both had the opportunity to talk with Andrew, who is one of the his name was Jason. He's Jason. Okay, you talked to Jason, but Andrew's the GM of Project Starline. We talked to him both at the Starline demo, also just kind of chatting later on. Totally awesome, really engaging, really believer of the product, really excited. Like when you get that, like that's what I did like about the IO experience, is like talking to the people who are building this stuff and getting that sense of that excitement. It just it was somewhat infectious, and like Starline looked really, really impressive. So,
Andrew Nartker is the general manager of Project Starline, and then Jason Lawrence is the director, and they both have been working on it for like 6 years. So I'm happy we finally got their name on these things, because I talked about it on TNW and I could not remember the name and I didn't have the time to search it. Anyways, it was a really interesting and powerful experience. Like I really enjoyed it. And I'm just like, man, if video conferencing was that, it's almost, it's not quite the same as like stepping on a teleporter and taking me to wherever that person is. But it's but it's as close as I'm probably going to get. You know what I mean? It was very, very real. Like, and the eye contact thing, I'll tell you, the eye contact thing was a little disconcerting, because I'm looking at this screen the way we're used to looking in screens, right? But I'm making eye contact with this person that I'm talking to, and he's making eye contact with me. And like, it felt kind of uncomfortable. It was like at some point I wanted to like look away, because I'm like, I don't know. It was real, but at the same time, it was a TV. And anyways, it was a pretty remarkable experience. So if you ever get the opportunity, if you happen to walk into a room and there's a Project Starline, has to use it.
Just try it. Just give it a shot. Yeah. Have your upside down cake and show the person you're talking to.
There you go.
So
there you go.
Yeah, never the fist bump.
But they didn't just talk about AI and apps and stuff at IO, right?
Oh, we're saving.
Here we are.
We're saving the best for last. Coming up, it's some hardware from Google I/O. All right. So, yes, we knew all about the hardware in advance, but we might as well give it 10 minutes or so to kind of talk about a little bit of what was announced. And Win, we'll start with you.
Yeah, and so the very eagerly awaited Pixel 7a was announced, and our very own Florence Ion has written up a little review of it. So check that out on gizmodo.com. But I mean, I think unabashedly, Flo really liked it. I mean, the title of her article is Google's Pixel 7a is just as good as the regular Pixel 7. And yeah, yes, for $100 less. And Flo makes a lot of really good she did a lot of really awesome testing and comparisons, but basically there's not a huge difference in a lot of ways between the two phones. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot that the 7a seems to do as well or even better than the 7. So for example, Flo, the camera actually in the 7a seems just a tiny bit better. And if you want to go like blow for blow, spec for spec, the Pixel 7a, for example, has a 64 megapixel main camera compared to the 50 megapixel camera of the Pixel 7, a 13 megapixel ultra wide versus 12 megapixel ultra wide. And even the front camera is 13 compared to the 10.8. And I think Flo even said in her article that while she found the Google Pixel 7's front camera to be a little muddy, does not feel the same way about the Pixel 7a. And not only are the camera units themselves good, But the 7A is also rocking the Tensor 2 chip, Tensor G2 chip, which I mean is, bringing you that, super awesome, computational photography and taking your pictures to the next level as Google does. And just in general, Flo found this phone to be as snappy and performant generally as the Pixel 7. There's like a lot of things that are just a little bit different. Like it's a little bit smaller. The storage is a problem. The storage max that you get for 7A is 128 gigabytes. So, I mean, if you do like using that slightly better camera, you'll have less space to take pictures and video with.
But apps can offload to the cloud, right?
Cloud and stuff like that. But the 7 does go up to 256. But I mean, just generally, like it's that is kind of one of the big things. And I think the battery life is slightly trade-off. Thank you. Is slightly less. And there is an mmWave version that costs $50 more. But I mean, just generally, like for $500 for a mid-range phone, you're getting, the same chip as like the flagships. You're getting roughly the same size screen. You're getting the same amount of RAM, which is not great at 8, but like not bad at all. Comparable capacity, fast charging, wireless charging, like a better camera, like IP67 versus IP68. And interestingly enough, while the 7 has in-screen fingerprint in terms of biometrics, the 7A has fingerprint and face unlock. That's interesting. It's really kind of confusing, right? Because obviously you have, it seems like it's starting to intrude on the space that the Pixel 7 is holding in terms of like, the Pixel system. So I don't know, Ron, you're my mid-range man. Thoughts? Like,
I loved it. I got to hold it. I get to use it. I got to play with it. It does not feel like a mid-range phone. Like the A series phones have felt plasticky in comparison to their non-A counterparts, which felt very metally and glassy. If you handed me this Pixel 7a and told me it was the 7, I would believe you. If you erase everything I knew about everything we knew, and like, here's the Pixel 7, I'd be like, oh wow, cool. Like it felt great. I would confidently recommend this to anybody who's looking for an Android phone in the mid-range, and be satisfied with what you get for $500. I mean, I think it's a home run personally. Yeah. Very, very surface, like just playing with it in the demo pit area. I'm hoping, knock on wood, I get a review in it and can, kind of take it through its paces a little more. But at first glance, I was super impressed. Jason, what did you think?
Yeah. Yes. I mean, and unsurprisingly so at this point, I feel like Google has kind of a good formula for the A series devices that they're releasing. It is interesting that, it's $100 difference from the Pixel 7. It's making me wonder, like, why have the A series be away from the regular device? Because the family is, you know what I mean? Like Samsung, well, I guess they kind of do that with their, do they even do the fan edition anymore? I don't think that they do. I can't remember the FE. But anyways, my point being, Samsung, releases like 3 Galaxies at the same time. Small, medium, and large, the Ultra and whatever they call the rest of them. The 7A is really the small, it's 6.1 inches. The Pixel 7's 6.3. The Pixel 7 Pro's 6.7. And they kind of, it's just like, $100 difference from the 7. So I don't know. It's kind of like, why do we even really need to wait for this? It's almost like they should all release at the same time. And you just have 3 options depending on the size, depending on the materials. And those are really the only 2 things that are kind of different. I mean, aside, the battery, like you said, is a little bit larger, actually. The other thing that you don't get is battery share. So the ability to share the battery of the device with another device, you don't get that on the 7A. But that's not really a feature that I use. So, and you get the lower storage. So there is that is pretty significant for a lot of people.
So, but is that enough for the 7A not to cannibalize like the audience and the buyers for the 7? And is that? And you know what? That's probably the reason why they stagger. Because if that did come out, then you know what I mean? Maybe that's a part of the reason why they stagger. But then are people just pissed that are they just mad? My bad. That they spent $100 extra for a slightly to somewhat better phone? Like, is that, I don't know. Like, I just think it's just, a little muddled, but I'm happy that the A is awesome. The positive note, I'm happy that the A is awesome.
Once again, the A stands for awesome, apparently.
It does. It really does.
Sure does. Also in the hardware parade was the a year in the making, the Pixel tablet finally was unveiled. I feel like we've seen it. We knew it existed. We've been waiting for it. The question was, what was it going to cost? And would it come with the dock, or would they charge for the dock, or whatever it would be? And happy to report that it's priced at a dang good price. For some reason, the Google store is giving me UK prices, which I don't really understand why. So I can't tell you the exact price it was. Yeah, there we go. I got it fixed. It fixed it for some reason.
It's $4.99, I think.
Yeah, I think it's $4.99. Yeah, sorry.
I wanted UK prices too. Did I link to it?
Yeah, I think the link in the dock goes to the UK.
Oh, GB. But I see.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but I was super excited to see the tablet get announced at $499, starting. That's with 128 gig of memory. You can get 256 gig of memory and that knocks the price up to $599. Comes in 3 colors: porcelain, hazel, and rose. And it comes with the dock. And here, if you're watching the video version, you can see my dumb face holding the tablet itself. But the big question for me is that tablet to dock snap-in moment. And it has a satisfying snap. It has a satisfying click. The magnets click in and it grabs it and holds it to that dock. I saw some articles and some coverage that were touting it, saying, not only is this an upgrade to the smart speaker kind of segment, but it's going to destroy it because it now has created a new product, which is the smart speaker with the tablet that detaches. And it's like Google has innovated by innovating in the space, they're going to destroy a product line, which is kind of what Google does. But I will say that I ordered this, and when you can attest to this because you were right next to me. I ordered it as they announced it. I was sold immediately upon seeing it. So my one little bit of criticism is they did show off a very cool case that had a little metal ring that also worked as a stand, and you can see, if you're watching the video, you can see me playing with that. And the metal ring snaps into the dock really nicely, and it all fits very organically. That case is like $80, which is like, that's a little. I did not buy that, but that was a little expensive for
for people on the who are only on the audio stream. The look of joy,
I know,
and kind of like enjoyment on Ron's face as he plays with the Pixel tablet is very. I don't know. Just
this
after
moment's
all
been a long time coming for Ron.
Yeah, it's awesome.
I love a good tablet, Mike. I want to know what you think about the tablet revolution that's coming. Do you think that this is it, or we still have a long uphill battle to go? Will this device change the fate of tablet apps?
I don't know about that, and I am a tablet user. I actually already have 2 perfectly good Android tablets in my house. I have an S8 Plus, which is a Samsung S8 Plus, which is, I think, a 12-inch tablet, and then a S6, which is a 9-inch. I'm still going to buy this, but I actually think I'm going to buy it more as a replacement for my original home 7-inch home with screen, which I love. It's like the best photo album in the world. Great location for just like central hub. So I don't know if I'm going to purchase it as a tablet as much as a home device, which is what you just said a moment ago. It's kind of like a killer feature for a different product segment.
If you're buying it as a home device, though, you're spending a lot more on this than you were spending on other home devices, like 2 to 3 times as much. You're buying it as a tablet that also has that functionality. It makes a lot more sense. And the fact that dock is included at the $500 price point, I think that for me, that was, once I heard that, I was like, okay, this is better than I had hoped. Like, I really thought that dock was going to be like another $100, $150, and then it would
I don't have any self-control. I buy pretty much every device that comes out. So I mean, certainly not every device, but if it has any interest, even a little bit, I'm like, oh yeah, take my credit card.
Okay.
Take my money.
Well, that's interesting, because I want to know, did you pull out your wallet for the Pixel Fold?
Oh, well, my wallet's not thick enough, ironically. Maybe my company will get me one of those.
Yeah.
Would be nice.
I mean, $1,799 for the Pixel Fold. Yes, announced at Google I/O. They showed it off. Dave Burke, as we said earlier in the show, did a bunch of demos from the stage, and they went really well. And, they had this device in the press area as well. So I spent a bunch of time pawing at the Pixel Fold. And yes, it has a nice kind of thin quality to it when it's unfolded. It feels thinner than any of the other Fold devices that I've used. So it feels really nice. I didn't notice this, but a bunch of other people noticed that it doesn't fold 100% flat. Like you kind of have to bend it a little further than it feels like it's supposed to go in order to get it to be completely flat. And I'd say the only way you'd probably notice that is if you had it laying on a table. Either that, or if you're very OCD, you would notice it in the palm of your hand. I didn't notice it, but I mean, the materials were excellent. It felt really nice in the hand as far as foldable is concerned. This style of foldable, though, for me, I don't trust myself with a device that folds like that. Because I feel like I'm going to want to hold it like I hold a phone, which is with one hand. And, once it's unfolded, it's really a two-hand device. And if you drop that thing, that is a pricey mistake to make at $1,800. I mean, if you drop a tablet, you're spending $500 to replace it. If you drop this thing, that's $1,800. That's a lot. But they did announce that if you order it now, I don't think it's forever, but if you order it now, you get a Pixel Watch thrown in and a couple of other freebies. So they're trying to, goose the Pixel Watch numbers a little bit. But it's a pretty sharp looking device as far as foldables are concerned. I really thought it was nice. The bezels on the inside didn't bug me. That didn't really bug me at all. So yeah, what did you think, Ron? Because you got to play around with it a little bit, right?
Yeah, I definitely wanted to feel it and feel the fold and get a sense for it. Yeah. I really like what they did from a software standpoint, like the camera modes, like being able to the Uber selfie, in the example, and and some of the viewing modes and stuff like that when like watching YouTube and all that sort of stuff. Like those are the things that like Google's going to bring to the platform that Samsung did, that differentiation that, like the Google approach to phones versus Samsung or Oppo or anybody else like that. I like the way it looks. I like the little Star Trek, camera bar to match the Pixel line. The folding felt good. It felt sturdy. It felt snap. Went in place. I didn't care about the folding flat type thing. I think that was fine. Bezel, I got to ding it on the bezel. Bezel was noticeable and distracting to me personally. But it's the first phone. They'll get there. So yeah, it definitely was a good first start. I thought for sure.
Yeah. So. Interesting stuff. So that's hardware. There were no Google I/O gimmies or freebies or anything like that. But there were a lot of hardware announcements. Obviously, we all saw that coming, right? So that's Google I/O in a nutshell. We're going to give you a little amuse-bouche here before we... actually, that's at the beginning of the meal, isn't it? Never mind. We're going to give you a little Android dessert. It's not an upside-down cake. It is J.R. Ray Feel. He's going to round out the show before we say goodbye with an Android intelligence tip. J.R., what you got?
Good day, one and all. So I/O is officially behind us, and while we're waiting for all the newly announced googly goodies to actually reach us, I've got a fun little improvement you can bring onto any Android device this minute. It's a really cool new feature that just showed up in my favorite Android launcher, Niagara. And if you haven't used Niagara before, it's a teensy bit different from your standard Android home screen setup. Niagara replaces your phone's default home screen with a simple list of your most commonly accessed apps. And everything else lives within a scrolling alphabetical menu that you pull up by swiping along either side of the screen. Now, Niagara is all about simplicity and eliminating all of the efficiency-harming clutter most of our home screens are weighed down by. So to that end, the setup supports just a single on-screen widget at its uppermost edge. It's part of its mission to encourage thoughtful configuration, keep only the stuff you actually interact with regularly front and center. And now Niagara's offering up a new way to put even more pertinent info at your fingertips without abandoning its minimalist, focus-centric philosophy. It's an option to stack multiple widgets on top of each other in that one single space. That gives you on-demand access to more useful info while still maintaining the launcher's trademark clutter-free environment. So in my setup right now, I've got a color-changing Material U-enabled clock in the default widget position. Then with a single swipe to the left on that area, I can see a list of my latest tasks from Todoist. And with a swipe to the right, I can see the native Android 13 battery status widget. The new widget stacking feature is included in the latest stable version of Niagara Launcher, so just go download it from the Play Store if you don't already have it. Then once you've got it up and running, press and hold your finger onto whatever widget you've got present at the top of the screen, and then select the Add Custom Widget option. Repeat that same process for each additional widget you want to add into the mix. And then all you've got to do is swipe your finger horizontally on that widget area of the screen to explore everything you've added. Niagara Launcher is free to use, though it does require a $10 a year or $30 lifetime upgrade to its Pro version if you want to maintain access to the stackable widgets and some other advanced options. If all that stuff enhances your efficiency as much as it does mine, well, it's pretty easy to justify as money well spent. And hey, if you want even more advanced efficiency in your life, come check out my Android Shortcut Super Course. It's a completely free week-long e-course that'll show you all sorts of awesome tricks for flying around your phone, typing out text faster than ever, managing your inbox more efficiently, and oh so much more. Just head over to androidintel.net/twit and scroll to the bottom of the screen to get started. That site again is androidintel.net/twit. That's all for now. We'll pick up with even more Android enhancing enchantment next week. Back to you, gang.
Enchantment. Enchanting. Niagara Launcher, that's a classic. J.R. Raphael, also a classic at androidintel.net/twit. Thank you, JR, for rounding out this episode. It all came together in the end. We had to kind of shuffle things around, but we made room for it. And yes, the supersized episode is not over because you have an interview after the credits. So definitely stick around for that. But this was a heck of a lot of fun. And Mike, I'm really happy that we could continue the tradition of having you on around I.O. Thank you for carving out some time. I've watched as your room has gone from light to dark. And you're muted. You're muted.
It is all good. And it's my pleasure, of course. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, of course. MikeWolfson.com. Anything you want to leave people with?
Nothing important I want to promote, but I will say that if you are in the San Francisco area and are a developer, DroidCon SF is coming up January 9th, and I would love to see you there.
Right on. So sf.droidcon.com is the place to go to check out information for that. Mike, always a pleasure. We'll have you back soon. Appreciate you. Thank you again.
Thank you again.
And Win, appreciate you and appreciate the fact that I got to hang out with you last week. It was just so great. What do you want to leave people with?
Also an Android developer. You can find my talks and accompanying code and videos at my website, randomlytyping.com. And, find me on the interwebs at Queen Code Monkey. There's actually someone named Queen Code Monkey, probably, hopefully that's me. What's
the story with the purple eyes?
Everybody always asks that one. Okay, so my local gym is awesome. They're called Endorphin, and they have what are called stink and drinks, where you advisably or inadvisably drink a little bit and you work out a lot of it. And that was I forgot what stink and drink. Yeah. They actually provided us a Coors Light on the exercise bikes on the in the cycling section. There was actually like a Coors Light or something. Oh my God, let's say that a light beer. And that was the workout equipment. We literally were doing balance things with it. Anyway, they had face paint. I put it on. I liked it.
I've never heard of a gym saying, "Hey, come work out and drink. It'll be great."
I guess that's why they had a light beer.
Yeah. Okay.
I definitely did not drink the whole thing.
Yeah, there was no tequila rower station, right?
I mean, there should have been.
That would be actually
but
kind
not
of
for
fun.
me.
Yeah.
It would be kind of fun.
Now
they made us do handstand holds there too. So anyway, yes,
cake
that's
stand,
what the story
handstands.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh gosh.
See, we could go many directions with this. I'm gonna have to tell my gym that they need to have a drink and stink.
I'll tell Endorphin and we'll have to credit you if they use that. Oh,
there we go. Thank you, Wynn. Always a pleasure. Ron, finally, what do you want?
Yeah, finally, just go follow me on Twitter and on Instagram at RonXO. I'm on Blue Sky. Thanks, Jason, at RonXO.BSky, whatever. Mastodon, all that nonsense. But I posted all my photos from Google I/O on my Instagram account and got more likes than I've gotten in ages. Everybody likes to see our smiling faces, so that was great. Thanks everybody.
Cool. Thank you, Ron. Thank you, Wynn. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Victor, here in studio, in person, every once in a while, pulling over that microphone and speaking. Thank you, man.
Thanks. No problem.
And thank you, Burke, who was in here a little while ago helping out. Thanks to JR Ray Field, androidintel.net/twit. You can find me just here on Twit. I'll just leave you with that. Tech News Weekly every Thursday, twit.tv/TNW. Also, don't forget we have Club Twit. It's really important to us because it brings you closer to the creation of our shows. It integrates you into keeping us going, and we appreciate that. Ad-free subscription tier, so all of our shows with no ads, exclusive Twit Plus podcast feed with tons of extra content, shows you can't find outside of the club, members only Discord, $7 a month, and you can find all the information you need to know there at twit.tv/clubtwit. And I'll just leave you with that. This show can be found at twit.tv/AAA. We record every Tuesday evening. So just go there and subscribe. Seriously, subscribe to the podcast and it will be delivered to you. We're probably going to get that hero image replaced here pretty soon with some of the images that we shot last week.
Because we're all together.
Yeah, we were all together. Yeah, we need to replace that. Twit.tv/AAA, and you can see what the new hero image is once it hits the web. Thank you, everybody, once again, for hanging out with us this evening. And again, there's an interview coming up after the credits, so check that out too. And that's it. We've reached the end of this supersized episode of All About Android. We'll see y'all next week. Bye, everybody. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Google I/O 2023. We're outside of the Shoreline Amphitheater where Google I/O has happened this morning. I'm Jason Howell, Wintwit Dow, Ron Richards.
Great to be here after many years. This is my first I/O since like 2015 to be in person, so I'm very excited.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's a great reason for everybody to meet up at the same place. We had a lot of fun on All About Android last night, and we're having a lot of fun today because we're sitting down with Dave Burke, VP of Engineering for Android, and Samir Samat, VP of Product Management. And we just always look forward to this opportunity. So first and foremost, thank you for giving us some of your time. And I have to say, like, you finished the keynote like an hour and a half ago, maybe. And here you are sitting down at a table with us. So I feel incredibly fortunate for that.
Is the adrenaline still pumping? Or have we come down a little?
Yeah. Am I like full?
So how did you feel about it? The show, from the audience standpoint, it was great. But
it's nice to be back.
It's nice to be back. I mean, that's the summary. I feel like if there's one thing we've learned in the last couple of years is that, these in-person events where we can all be together again are just so unique and special. And so for me this year, I was like, well, if I'm going to do I/O, I want to go all in on live demos because that's what people come for, right? And they kind of like get excited with you when it works, and they maybe commiserate when it doesn't, and they feel the tension. And so I had a lot of fun today. We just demoed a lot.
Did you do live demos? I missed it.
I'm just kidding. Pre-recorded.
Yeah, Dave had quite a few live demos. I think he has the dubious distinction of coming back in two I/O segments to do demos. I don't think we've ever had anyone else do that. So, but it all went well. So demo gods.
I was going to say, it all worked out all right. I mean, I'm sure you both have enough experience that you go into those no matter how prepared you feel, with trepidation, because anything could possibly
happen. I had a plan A, plan C, plan A, B, C, and then plan D was my personal device, my back pocket. I was know that works.
And plan E is to run screaming out of the room, your hands over your head.
It all went really well.
It all worked out.
Well, I think if it wasn't abundantly clear, the overarching theme, and we talked about this last night on the shows, like if we had to guess what we're going to see tomorrow, I mean, there was no guessing. There was no question. It was going to be artificial intelligence. And I think there's so many announcements around AI that maybe just from a broad kind of view of what you guys are bringing to the table here, it really felt like the story, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that generative AI is here, and here's how it plays into our products. Because when I think of something like ChatGPT, I think of this destination I have to go to in order to use it. But Google is basically bringing that AI into the products that we're all already using. Would you say that's a fair assessment, that that's kind of like the story of AI with Google right now?
I think that's right. I think you just step back for a minute. AI is something that Google's invested a lot in over the years. And, a friend of mine asked me recently, was like, why is it all suddenly why did it suddenly take off in the last 6 months, and what happened? And, I think of it as like a trifecta. So 3 things. So it's more data. I mean, we all have an intuition for that. Oh yeah, more data, more compute. We all have an intuition for that because we see our phones are faster and our laptops are faster. But the real difference is the models got better. That's what caused that sort of nonlinear, the shift. And the model, there were really 2 models that have really made the difference. One is transformer models, and the other one is our diffusion models. And actually, these are things that we worked on at Google, quite early on. And actually, Google researchers published the original transformer paper, and we can nerd out all on it if you want, but I won't go too deep on it. But it's really kind of ushered in this whole generative AI sort of era, if you like, and we've been using it a lot. So if you use search and you type in a very esoteric query, it will sort of bypass all the caches and you'll hit what we call BERT, which is it's actually an encoder. It's like a transformer encoder, and so we've been deploying these technologies for quite a long time. But I think deploying them in a generative form is something that we haven't done as much of, right? And so I think that's what you see at today's keynote. And there's a range of stuff from Workspace to the search generative experiences to the things we showed on Android. But yeah, it was a pretty exciting,
Yeah, and I think it's exactly what you said though. The opportunity I think that we've always seen with this kind of technology is the technology is super cool. We want to make it available for developers to use. They'll build amazing things with it. But there's so many developers inside Google who build products that we all depend on every day. How can those products get better with this technology, right? And so I think what we wanted to do today was to showcase not just the technology, but also how the technology comes into each and every one of those products that we all use, and what can it do for me, because that is, I think, a thing that, people are curious about is, okay, I've heard a lot about it. I've played with these chatbot things and they're cool. I can definitely see things I can do, but what's the big deal? How's it really going to change? Well, I love the Gmail example that Aparna and Dave showed, where you can write a very short, terse prompt and it'll generate the email for you. I mean, who doesn't?
Right?
Yeah, who doesn't think that they're going to use that every day? And so there's so many just possibilities. So I was really excited about how we showcased some of that. And then I think with Android, we wanted to kind of keep it a little lighter. And we were working on a whole roadmap of stuff. Some we can probably hint at today. But I think the things that we showed, we wanted to keep it a little bit lighter and just also show that AI can be fun and help you just express yourself in creative and interesting ways. So, obviously Dave showed what you can do with messages by Google and just rewriting what you're about to say to somebody. And then also the generative wallpapers, which are just neat, and I think really relatable. So that was the goal of today.
So in my experience, so much of the conversation with AI has been oh, the robots are coming, they're going to take my job and all this sort of stuff. And it's interesting to see. And what we were talking about is the application of how you take this technology, and the wallpaper is a great example. It's I love San Francisco. Let me press a button and get a illustrative way of it. And I feel like that kind of helps bridge the gap between this kind of fear of AI versus where it's no different than the code. It's just another way to do the stuff we do on our phones. So,
I like how you said that, because, for us, so I was nerding out a little bit earlier about like diffusion models and transform models and all that stuff. But actually the hard part in my view is like, how do you make this approachable, right? And relatable and fit for purpose and honestly safe. You got to be careful because think about the generative AI wallpaper, the way it works. There's structured prompts. You pick the different options you generate. We could have had an open text box, but an open text box is not approachable because it's like, here's a blank canvas, draw something. You're like,
get creative.
They're creative. Yeah. Create. And then also like there's a safety aspect to it. Well, okay, what the hell can I create? Is that even going to be safe for work kind of thing? So, or safe for my kids. And so, I think the solution we came up with, it seems kind of obvious in retrospect, but like when we were thinking of all the different types of ways, internally we call it Mad Libs, by the way, where you have these like drop downs.
Nice.
But I think the idea is like very simple, and it's what Samir was getting at. It's like it's applying this stuff and figuring out how to apply it. And actually, honestly, this is like such an exciting time. Like this is the perfect, being on Android and this time in computing history is just like perfect because we have all this amazing set of like algorithms, technologies, infrastructure, and then we have all of these surfaces and user problems. And so, honestly, it's just a lot of fun.
Yeah, I know like the operative word a lot in like the zeitgeist is generative, but watching the keynotes, both the kind of main keynote and the developer keynote, I couldn't help but, this is corporate speak, maybe my bad, but synthesis, like a lot of it is just bringing together different tools. And I know you talked about maybe like letting people like myself, developers, kind of see the possibilities of it. And for, I guess most of our viewers aren't necessarily watching the developer keynote, but something I was surprised about was that even AI and like there's going to be an Android Studio chatbot. And that feels like the like epitome of a synthesis where, hey, like here are these different resources, here's things that you usually look up.
Yeah.
Let the bot kind of like do things for you. And I thought that was really cool.
Yeah. I am super excited about Android Studio Bot. We had it in the developer keynote, and I mean, it really could have like held its own in the consumer, even because it taps into your imagination and it makes programming, I think, more accessible. But if you think about what it's actually doing, so today or yesterday, everything's changing so fast. But yesterday, you would be in Android Studio and you'd be like, coding along, and you're like, going to curse, I'm not allowed to curse, like, how do I do this thing? And so you would go to like developer.android.com, or frankly, you'd go to Stack Overflow, and you would sort of go to these resources and you'd search and you sort of look at the results. Is that what I want? And maybe it is. Copy and paste, take some pieces, like clean it up or whatever. Now you just go to your point, like you go to StudioBot and you're like, hey, I got this, like there's an error in the compiler, in the Kotlin compiler, click, what is this? And it will tell you what it is and how to fix it. Or you could say, hey, I'm stuck in this point, tell me how to do this. And it will just give you the code, and you press a button. It's beautifully syntaxically highlighted, and then you press a button and it inserts the code for you. And so it basically just makes that whole process so much easier because the information is encoded in the foundational model. And so we've done a ton of work in like in fine tuning that and like figuring out how to make it seamless. And then, coming back to this, this technology, like I was talking about safety earlier. I mean, you also have to think about like, okay, so I work in an enterprise. I don't want that code, leave it, that's my company's code. I don't know what the rights are for that to leave the IDE. And so we had to think through all that about not sharing the code. And so I think what's interesting, like from a product management point of view today, is like, how do you have to think through all these different angles that are new. But StudioBot, and I think StudioBot's kind of like that, as you said, synthesis. It's in that genre of like, sort of a co-pilot or whatever you want to call it, an assistant, or, that's helping you, and it works really well.
I mean, there were a few examples given today, and we've certainly heard this about generative AI, earlier than today, about the ability of these generative AI systems to write code. And I guess where my mind ends up, and we joked about this a little bit, it's like, oh, I'm a developer too. I can go to, Bard and plug in what I want and I get code. I'm a developer, yay. But what do you think about how tools like this actually transform the role of a developer? Because I mean, it does kind of move the goalposts as far as what it takes to be a developer. Sure, you need to have developer chops, and I'm not saying a system like this is going to completely replace developers, but it does alter the needs, the requirement of that developer and their knowledge to a certain degree. Maybe it propels them to another level. But what are your thoughts on that? Like, how does it impact that?
I mean, one of the things I've always found is that, as an engineer, if you have time to actually dig into the whole business problem that you're solving, you're just so much more motivated by what you're doing, as opposed to like, here's a spec, like, let me go, like nobody really wants to do just that, And so I think, but sometimes it's pretty hard because it's like, you have a lot of minutia to get through, right? So I think the first step is just like, can we use this technology to get as little focus on the minutia as possible, not to the detriment of products, but like maybe we can increase the quality while we do that too, And I think it'll just let everybody pick their head up just a little bit and just say like, okay, like how can I actually, like, what are we doing here? Like, what are we solving? Is this the best way to solve it? And I think the line at Google, honestly, historically between like software engineer and product manager, I don't think product managers write a ton of code to Google, but I think software engineers play a lot of the product manager role as well. And I think that's really good. And I think over time, as we've just seen in our company, there's just like a lot of code and a lot of maintenance and a lot of things to do. And they've started doing like more and more and more software engineering and a little bit less of the product. And so I'm excited about kind of rebalancing that because I think just people are so much more motivated when they get that time back.
Yeah. The other reality is like, if you're, a full-time coder, and especially if you're a rusty coder, that's me. Like there's just a lot of tedium. Like there's a lot of like, how do I do this boilerplate thing again? And like, I just want to focus on the innovative idea of this product that I'm building. And so this, that's what this does. I think in the limit, if you think about coders or magicians, they can make things appear and, do things. We're bringing in more magicians in the limit, but really we're just automating the kind of tedium in a lot of ways and maybe that's not ambitious enough to say, but that's why I think when you see the developers in Shoreline today, when they saw Studio Bot, they're like, oh yes, hell yes. They're not worried about their job. They're like, this is going to make me so much more productive.
So it becomes, how do you use the tool to be creative?
Exactly.
To be innovative,
I can be more, I can be more creative, more innovative, more productive.
Right. And it's interesting that you say that the tedium of this, because it's easy to hear that and be like, and because I will take a step back. I do know, I was participating in the Club Twit Discord for some of our members during the live event, and some of the demonstrations, right? Like composing an email, that you write in a couple of words and then you can expand it and everything like that. Some of the people were joking, well, this is all like, baseline, like tedium stuff. Like why this is so not creative. Why are we kind of, writing to this level? Why doesn't it elevate? Why doesn't it this or that? And when I really thought about it, I was like, but wait a minute, like a lot of what we actually do in our lives is very tedious. Right. The forms that we create, the standardized emails that we send out to people to ask, hey, can you blah, 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 blah. A lot of that is incredibly tedious.
Circling
and these systems are just mirroring what we're already doing. Right. So if we don't actually have to do it, the computer can do it.
It's interesting because if you think about like now we're getting kind of more technology, but look at the evolution of technology. Like people spent days doing the laundry and then we got a washing machine.
Exactly.
That
I was literally going to make that analogy.
Oh, yeah.
Well, if you think about, for any of the product managers that are listening, how many times have you, late at night created some presentation deck and then you're like, oh, I gotta add notes, because it's someone else is going to give it or you're going to give it. And like, I just love the feature that Aparna showed today, where it's like automatically generate the notes from the slides, and
my goodness,
and it's just like, okay, now you're really starting to talk to me about what can help me, And so I think this is where like AI can really be made a little bit more understandable, and frankly, I think I've heard so many people today talk about like, just when can I use it?
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, I was there signing up for every waitlist.
Yeah,
let's go here. I'm like, sign up, right?
Well, and that's kind of the beauty of it. When can I use this? How can I use this? And the how can I use this is, well, just keep using the apps you're already using.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Eventually, this button's going to appear.
That's right.
Or however that is presented.
That's right. I think it's that pervasive, and I think it has that broad an impact on our products. So that's exactly what is going to happen. It's just going to permeate and appear everywhere.
Yeah.
So switching gears, like staying on the AI topic, but like here, Google I/O keynote, like you mentioned, it's a consumer keynote, right? Very focused on what it does. Historically, a lot of the conversation at I/O has been around the next version of Android. I don't think you guys said Android 14 once in the keynote. Was that by design this year, or how does that,
Yeah, yes and no.
Yeah.
Dave can elaborate a lot on sort of how we've been evolving our thinking around that. But I just like taking a quick step back. One of the realizations that we had is, as the consumer keynote broadens its audience, it used to be long ago that I/O, like most of everybody that watched it was a developer actually. Mm-hmm. And over time, what's happened is it's become more than just Android. It's become more than just developers. It's kind of like the whole Google narrative. And what's interesting actually, just as a quick sidebar, is that a lot of the folks who are Android developers would tell us, could you all just take a quick step back? But like before we get into the APIs, could you just tell us like what are you trying to do? So it was because developers are users too, and so they're consumers as well, so they're interested. So I think what we wanted to do in when we talk about Android or really anything is just talk about it from a consumer experience standpoint. What will you get this year? That's cool, and leave the vehicles to the details. Because a lot of folks, I mean, I think you're the audience that listens to this, and I think all of us here, we're like pretty interested in those vehicles, like what's in Android 14, what's in this, what's in that. And so that is important, and we can go through that. But I think for the general audience, what we realized is that they just want to know what's going to be new and that they're going to get it all, And so we just sort of take it from that perspective instead of chopping it up.
We have more vehicles. I mean, you probably noticed we have these like quarterly spotlights and that we lean into. We have vehicle, we can update apps independently of the OS. We've been able to do that for a long time. That apparently that was innovation for some people recently. And
still feels pretty innovative to me. I know what it was like before all that.
Yeah.
Or the way it is now, but it's miles different. I love it.
And then we have like play system updates where we can actually we could literally update the virtual machine on an Android S, version and increase the performance by just changing the VM with an updatable module. Like we have like very sophisticated update mechanisms in Android. We probably don't talk about it enough. I mean, we like can roll these A/B updates. We can test them, roll them back. I mean, it's pretty amazing. And then we have like Google Play services, and we have like Jetpack libraries, and so we have all of these vehicles. And so exactly what Samir said, and actually like maybe a little bit of inside baseball. We used to like when we did our product planning, we used to sort of have like we'd write an at a glance sort of summary docs. We'd be like Android 11 at a glance. Now it's like Android 24 at a glance, right? Like we just think about the year, right? And then we talk about the different, we talk about what we want to do to Samir's point and what we want to deliver, and then we have the vehicles. That's sort of a subtext. So there's multiple vehicles as well as the core OS. So.
When you said 24, I immediately thought, wow, you guys are planning like 10 versions ahead. I was blown away. That's amazing.
But it's funny you mentioned that because during your demo, I think when you giggled when you mentioned Jetpack with the with
the drag and drop Jetpack Compose, the drag and drop library. I'm sorry, I was like really excited because I was getting ready to like write my own system, but that
was great.
It was like almost Wynn's own personal like
just in time before you.
No, we play the Compose drinking game on the show where every time I get to talk about Compose, Wynn takes a drink, but then it gets a little more confusing now with Magic Compose, but that's okay.
Yeah. So. We may or may not have changed the name of that 24 hours ago. This is how we do product design. Compose is we should talk about Compose another time. Compose is amazing. I love Kotlin and Compose. It's like so elegant. It's so nice. I keep telling folks internally who don't code at Google, like, this is so good. You realize that, like, it's really nice. Anyway.
But I mean, it connects to other things that we've talked about. And as you mentioned, we are trying to take the minutia, the boilerplate out of daily life, whether it's a developer or a consumer. And so I feel like it feels like the roadmap, the game plan the last few years, at least from a developer's perspective, has been, hey, do you actually want to have time to think about the product level or the higher level engineering? So it all kind of fits.
Yep.
Synthesis.
Yeah. And to be clear, when I say TDM, it's like it's sort of like what's not tedious is when you're innovating and using the code to create this. Here's my idea and I'm bringing my idea to life. What's tedious is like, how do I close the camera handler again? Or like the camera object, like where's the camera? Well, I know the camera one API. That's the thing where you're like, that's the TDM part where you want just the bot to be like, oh, here's how you do it. Oh yeah, paste the code. Boom, done. Let's go.
There are about like dozens of developers cheering when I think one of the examples that Jamal gave for the Android Studio bot was remembering to put internet permissions. So just for the audience, everyone hits that. Everyone has forgotten to give the app internet permissions. Yes, so that's kind of one of those things that this will help us.
I think I do it every time.
Every single time.
Create something I forget. I'm like, why is it? Oh yeah.
Internet permissions.
Yeah. I can't believe I said camera handle. That dates me. Is you can guess which operating system I started with. Handler. I mean, we can guess which operating system I started with. Anyway, enough of that.
Well, so just to go back just real quick on as far as Android 14 is concerned.
Yeah.
Considering everything that we've just talked about the past 5-10 minutes, what would you say is the story of Android 14?
I would say it's more. This release is a little. Sometimes we do very like user-facing sort of visual changes, like when we brought in Material U. That was a really big one, right? I think this one is more. What's the right word? I mean, plumbing just sounds too negative, but it's under the hood sort of architecture, making this up on the fly.
Which is maybe not like a sexy, like
right. It's not
someone sees that and they're like, oh, I've got to have Android 14 because it's got under the hood architecture changes.
But it's important. It's faster. It's got higher performance, right? And so we did a lot of work on. We have two projects. The code names internally, I don't mind sharing them. Is Snowbird and Falcon. And the way I think of how I remember snow is the S sounds is close to Z, which is freeze. Okay, I'm losing myself here, but and what we're doing is we're trying to reduce the number of the impact of broadcasts. And so what we often find is, Android has this idea of a broadcast and an app can listen to it and the app can wake up or come out of a cached state and you can get like thundering herd issues and you can get a lot of churning on the IO. And so what we're doing now is we're not actually we're actually allowing apps to basically stay cached for a longer time. So we sort of queue up all the broadcasts for an app and then wake the app up and go, here are your broadcasts, rather than one at a time doing it and it's coming in and out. And then another one we're doing is like, if there's a broadcast like battery change, it happens all the time. We sort of batch them up because you don't care that which one, you just need to get caught up. And you collapse it to one. So that's an example of, and that makes a huge difference because it's sort of fundamental to operating system. So that's Snowbird. And then Falcon is about really refining our foreground services. They tend to these are the notifications that pop up for an app and you can't swipe, the ones that won't swipe away.
Yes.
But they're important in a way because it's kind of conferring to the user that this app is running, right? But it's pesky. And so what we realized was like, okay, well, first of all, like there are some legitimate cases where you want that. And then there's some cases that are like, probably not ideal. And so one case they were kind of, I would say misuse is the wrong word, but they were used for that because there was no other choice, was like when an app needs to download some data, like maybe it's a weather app and needs to grab a snapshot of the data or it's a news app or something. And so what we've done is we've basically created a new set of foreground services. There's not one for data. Instead, there's now a new API job basically for data that doesn't require a foreground service. And then we've categorized the rest of them into like, is it a camera? Is it a health app? Is it, a location or something like that? And so what you should hopefully see over time is less nuisance foreground services. And that will also help our performance. So that's an example of like one of the things we're doing internally. Health Connect's another one. I don't know if you want to mention that. It's a big change.
Health Connect's another one. So, Health Connect, I think for a long time, we have been focused on helping people connect different health services to each other, right? And that's important because, if you have a Peloton device and, you have Peloton at home and you have a, Wear Watch and you have an Oura Ring and a Withing scale, you're like, oh, I gotta like, where do I go to like dock all this information? It's actually important to realize that you're building your own personal health record. There's what happens at the doctor's office and then there's what happens with all this information. And so in the ideal future world, you'd be able to dock all that together, right? And then share it with only who you want. And I think there's going to be a lot of new insights that come from that, connectivity, because your doctor today doesn't really have full access to that information. They don't track that and you don't necessarily have all your records either, in your hand. So being able to bring all that together. So Health Connect is a system that sits on your Android phone to essentially manage the data flows between those things and do it in a safe and private way where you provide access for data to move from one app to another, and it's all in your control. It's all on the device. It's encrypted. So we made that part of the platform. We've been working on it independent of the platform, and we decided it reached APIs and so forth. It reached a maturity level where it's now part of the platform. So that's really exciting.
Is that a mainline module as well?
Yes.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. And the other thing I wanted to quick mention is, we've been working on security and privacy every Android release. So it would be like amiss if I didn't mention a couple of the things. One of the things that I'm pretty excited about that we're doing, and it seems small, but I just wanted to mention it because I think the impact will be outsized for folks who really care about this, which is, when you're giving an app permission, for example, to location, right? We of course added a while back while in use permissions, right? But now from the safety labels, the data that when you upload your app to Play, you fill out a thing called a safety label, which is, what do you do with this data that your app collects? Well, that information from the safety label is now piped through to the notification, to the prompt, the permission prompt. So when it asks you, do you want to give this app location permission? actually a little snippet there from their safety label, which will say this app does share data with third parties for location. Which is like, that's information. Because when we realized that, we're like the safety label, and then we looked at the permission, and a lot of times you answer the permission and then you're like, wait, but the safety label's over there. And it's like information I could have used, right? So we pull that in now, which I think is a really, like, it's a small insight, but I actually think it's kind of a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
A couple other things so on privacy that reminded me, we've improved foreground services So one of the issues we've seen, not so much in the US, but I mean, Android's such a huge platform globally. We've seen some abuse where apps sort of will launch a full screen intent takeover of the phone. And so now we've changed the policy so that really it can only be like a clock, like an alarm clock or a dialer, which are kind of what you would expect to do it and nothing else. And so it might seem like a small thing, but it's important. A couple other things to mention. This is not so obvious. That's why I want to mention it, is share sheet. So one of the challenges we have with share sheet is
everybody gasped.
It's not our proudest moment. I'll be honest.
It's okay.
Even some of the Google apps have their own custom share sheets. And so what we've been doing over time is improving the system one. And so, for example, we've improved some of the custom targets on share sheet in Android 14. But what's not really easy to understand from blogs and stuff is that we now have a plan for all the Google apps to adopt the system share sheet. So you'll see, because now the share sheet's brought up to a level where because they had a valid reason. Each team at Google had a valid reason to have a custom thing, just like anyone building an app. And so now I think we finally got to the system share sheet to a level that is where the apps need them, and the Google apps are pretty sophisticated set of apps. So you'll see over time, you'll see more coherence coming. So that's one thing that's not clear. And then something that's hard to pick up from blogs. The other one is Ultra HDR. That's our fancy name for. So HDR is like high dynamic range, right? So you've got like brighter range of colors, effectively. And one of the challenges is like you can't just introduce a new format, because then if I share a HDR photo to an app that doesn't understand it, it gets desaturated. So we have a new approach where you have a JPEG and it has the standard dynamic range in the sort of main body of the JPEG, and then we have a gain map that goes alongside it. It's in the file format container. But it means that if an app is savvy and understands HDR, it will take the gain map and then expand the SDR to the high dynamic range. Doesn't change the color space. Color space is the same. And so that's a way of us introducing HDR in the platform. And why is that important? Well, I think one of the things is we have these amazing cameras on many devices like a Samsung or a Pixel, but the photos tend to be the best taken from the camera. And when you then use the social networking app to take the photo, it's not so good. This will help those cases.
So that's no new file format, which is important.
Yeah, exactly.
Like
Just JPEG. Yeah.
JPEG, that's great.
Yeah. So, actually, a lot of what we do is like, how do you introduce these things with a sort of a back compatible approach that doesn't make things worse as everybody's catching up. And so that was one of those things that took a little while to get right. But that's some. I was just looking at my little notes here to try and remember. There's so many other things. I mean, system UI. We talked about the lock screen clock, which was just something that a lot of people asked us to customize. And it's like, I mean,
it feels like that's been a long time.
It's been a long time ago. Yeah, sure.
I mean, within the realm of Material U, this idea of a device that you can make fully customizable, and then the clock is kind of like, well, what about that thing?
What other thing? So we got around to that, and no AI was harmed in the process. And then custom shortcuts, which is what was what we were requested. A lot of people requested as well. The other thing that we're doing, it's still not GA or whatever you call it, generally available. Is predictive back, but I'm really excited about it. It's this thing, back is such a core concept in Android, and so the challenge is like
storied history.
It has a storied history, and the challenge is like you're deep in end activities, and you come back to the final one, and now you're going to fall back to home, but you don't know, and so predictive app shows you a peak, an animation peak. Mm-hmm. We were planning to launch it in 14, but it just wasn't quite. The quality bar wasn't quite right, so we decided we still did a bunch of work. You can still turn it on in developer options, but it wasn't quite to the bar we wanted. So hopefully we'll land it for next cycle. But that's just it's a cool feature that I like.
You mentioned clocks. I wanted to add one more clock thing, but it's not for phones. It's for watches. So we have this watch face format that we introduced, which is pretty cool. It's this it's declarative XML file, basically XML format that works with this watch studio. So you can, with this, sort of IDE interface, define a watch face. And the reason that's cool is it's just like fun to design these watch faces. I expect a lot of developers to do it, and there'll be a lot more watch faces, which I think for all of us who wear watches is exciting. But the other thing is, what we found is that people were kind of building watch faces in a lot of different ways, and you can get yourself in trouble battery wise pretty quickly when you're designing a watch face. And there are some safeties in the OS that obviously help with that, but you can go ahead and get yourself kind of run up against the rocks. And so what's nice about the Watch Face Studio is that all that code is generated for you, and as the platform gets adds new capabilities for improving the efficiency of the watch faces, including more offload to like the little processor that's on the device, etc. The Watch Face Studio will just like recompile, and you'll get all the benefits of that stuff. So you don't have to sort of like recode your watch face over and over again, which is pretty neat.
Yeah, I imagine developers love when those kinds of things are made,
Yes, please. We like things
less reliant upon your absolute attention to it. But of course, it's always there. I know that we're running a little bit short on time, and we haven't even talked about devices. So why don't we spend just a couple of minutes just kind of focused on how Android is kind of relating how some of the changes to Android over the last couple of years, right? We were talking about Android 12L.
Yeah, I feel like today was the culmination of what 12L being like, we want to embrace larger screen devices, and we're like, wonder why. And then we find out the tablet's coming. And now with the Fold, this is kind of
actually that when you were asking like what's Android 14 about, that's kind of where I was going to go, which is, there is a ton of, as Dave said, behind the scenes, work that's been done, but to be honest, it's a culmination of multiple releases. 12L, which is kind of a bit of an off-cycle release that we did, but because we really wanted to start getting this in the hands of device makers and developers, because when we saw foldables initially, start to hit the market and take off, we were just incredibly fascinated by this form factor. And Android usually leads in these form factors, but I think one thing that we could do a better job on is making sure that we hit that polish level more quickly. And so with foldables, we just saw an opportunity to say, hey, wait a minute, large screens are a thing, because of this new innovation. It's an opportunity to reinvigorate that whole category of devices, all the way from tablets to foldables and kind of like the different size factors in between. And so what you see now with this release is, and you saw Dave demo a whole bunch of this, like it's very powerful. And the developer capabilities are there. So it's easy. It's not complicated to build apps that take advantage of drag and drop and so forth and so on. We have set ways of doing it. So it's not a choose your own adventure. You can always do that, but at the same time, it's nice to have defined clear paths golden paths for people to walk through to make this happen. And I think that we're now on, nth generation of foldables, right? And what I really want to give a lot of credit to the Samsung team here, because I think they pioneered a lot of this.
Yeah, they paved the way.
Yeah, they super paved the way. And we not only did they do that with their hardware, but we've worked with them really closely. Like this is the first time that Pixel is launching a fold, but Samsung's had a number of foldables up until now, and we've worked with them on every single one of them. And a lot of the features that you saw today, actually, a lot of the innovation was done in tandem with them, and a lot of those components are actually shipping on their current devices. And so what's really nice is we've been able to kind of build this category together. And now people are jumping in and making it even more interesting category. You have Oppo and Xiaomi and Google and a whole bunch of other companies jumping in. So we're super excited about it, and I think that does come all together in 14.
Yeah, for sure. And then with the Pixel tablet, of course, like we've talked a lot about tablets because we feel as if, the tablet space in Android is very murky because, iPad dominates in terms of, people think of tablets. I have a proud owner of a Lenovo tablet. I use it all the time, but they tend to fall under a media device, or I use it instead of a Kindle.
Right.
But now with the Pixel tablet, it seems like you guys kind of, returning back to that tablet spec, but over 50 Google apps being developed to optimize for the tab, take advantage of it. Other apps like Calm and Disney Plus optimizing it. it's a kind of a chicken and the egg kind of thing, because in order to get developers to put the resources into adapting their apps, there need to be users, but in order to be, so how do you guys approach that from a developer relation standpoint?
I mean, it's always been that way for even when we started Android at the beginning for mobile, and I was really close to the start, helping start Android TV. It's chicken and egg. It's precisely what it is. And you just sort of got to ooch and scooch and make a little bit of progress. And then the apps come in and they make the platform, and you just have to iterate. I think, it's important for Google to lead by example here. And that means you mentioned over 50 apps. So we need to, show that we are committed. I think it's important for Google to have hardware in the tablet space and show we're serious about it. And that, that will help push forward. And then, more developers they see us do it. So you get more developers on, and then the products get better, and then more developers come on, and that's how you do it. One of the things you'll see, we had a blog post today about some of the third-party apps, some of the big names, and you mentioned Peloton, I think that was in the article. And you'll probably, we're planning every, I don't know what the exact cadence is going to be, but we'll have a series of blog posts because we're working with so many third-party developers, and we'll show the progress. So this isn't a sort of a one and done for Google I/O. This is a path. And the momentum is really good, and then the Pixel tablet, I think, is a really nice product. I think you saw the foldable work that I demoed today, and all that translates to tablet too, right? So, which is really nice. And then I think one of the things I really liked about the Pixel tablet, just to talk about that product for a second, is, it's very simple. It has a dock, so it's always charged, right? So I've had I've had this thing for a year and in my home, and it's like awesome. It's like, oh, my tablet's ready, great.
Well, and it's a satisfying click.
And it's very
That's
satisfying.
So right?
Pop, it just pops right on there. But I did find that actually a pretty unexpected, compelling moment from the keynote where, the presenter, I'm blanking on her name, but she had the tablet in the drawer. Rose, that's right. And the drawer opens, the tablet's in the drawer, and it's dead. And I've been there a million times. It's like, just give the tablet a home. Give it a home where it can get the juice that it needs so that it can be, your companion.
It's often the simplest ideas that are most powerful. And then, it has this nice speakers. When you dock it, the audio seems to translate. And then you sort of extrapolate this, and you're like, okay, so it's on the dock, and it's at a nice angle. Okay, so let's make it proactive. Let's have information that's useful for me. Or I turn off the light and it will dim its screen, and it will turn into a clock mode. And now it can be a photo frame. And now it can be basically a Google Assistant. So it's basically a home hub now. And now it can be a controller. And so, it's sort of just all.
And we're Google. We've done a lot of art displays. So we can do that over here too.
Exactly. Yeah.
That was kind of what the question that popped up in my head. Like, is this a tablet first? Or is it a smart display first with tablet? You know what I mean? Which direction?
I mean, all of the above. But I mean, as an Android person, I'm most excited about it's a tablet first, and I think if you talk to the team in Google, they'll tell you it's tablet first too, because it has to be like actually it's one of the premises at the beginning is like it has to be a great tablet first, and so that was a focus.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, I know I'm looking at the time. We got to round things out. Do you have we missed anything that we need to throw out there before suddenly we don't have our opportunity anymore?
I got to say satisfying click. So I'm
check mark.
I did get a chuckle from we were in the product demo pit for the press, and the woman from Google was over my shoulder, and I did it, and she's like, "It's nice, isn't it?"
Yes, it really is.
She knew exactly what I was doing.
Well, we are delighted every time we get a chance to come to Google I/O. Even more delighted when we get the chance to speak with you both. Just really want to thank you for taking time out of what is always a crazy day, Google I/O keynote day, to give us 45 minutes of your time. We're just over the moon. So thank you very much for carving out that
Thank
time.
you. And we love what you're doing, and the fans of this podcast are really important to us. So thank you so much.
And we're fans too. So thank you.
Right on. Excellent. Well, Dave Burke, Samir Samat, we will talk to you next time, hopefully. And everybody, we have our live coverage. If you missed it of the keynote, if you want to hear what Leo and the crew were saying while everything was happening, you can just check it out at twit.tv/news, where you find this podcast as well. So thank you so much here from the Google campus. We'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.